What is it moving with? Just risk assets at this point? It got back to an all-time high, which you were forecasting as well. But now I think, what are we, 104 this morning, so it's pulled back.
Yeah, I think it's consolidating. It makes sense. Bitcoin is responding to global liquidity, which is moving up, and I think anticipating a dovish Fed next year, so that's a tailwind for Bitcoin. But, Bitwise has a great stat. 95% of all Bitcoin's been mined, but 95% of the world doesn't own Bitcoin. So I just think that there's still a huge demand versus supply imbalance, meaning there's a lot more potential buyers of Bitcoin over the next 10 years. And so I think there's a lot of upside into year end.
Into your 150 target.
150, maybe 200, even 250 this year.
What? 150 to 200 to even 250. And what's you don't have a terminal price on that, do you?
Well, it's I think at a minimum it should have the same network value as gold. And if you look at above ground gold, it's probably 23 trillion. So that would be 1.2 million for Bitcoin. But I think Bitcoin is more valuable than gold. So gold. I mean, Bitcoin could be 2 million, 3 million long term. I mean, even higher.
Okay, thank you. And we're talking years, obviously, but 95% mined. I don't think the last one is mined till 2150 or something. It's getting harder and harder.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what decimal you want to use, it's probably 2040 or something. But but it's if you're having something forever, it'll always.
So what's your terminal value?
That's what we just said.
I mean,
the final.
He said 2.5 million.
2.5 million at the end.
Yeah.
Or maybe higher.
Or maybe even higher.
I didn't appreciate that point.
Yeah, I mean, it could.
But I guess maybe the way I meant that is, does that happen at the end after it's all?
When it's all mined.
When it's all mined?
And there'll be network fees generated.
Or does that happen before it's mined?
It's like as if Berkshire did a buyback and there was only one share left. What would Berkshire's share price be? It'd probably be the market value of Berkshire.
And as you said,
Happy Bitcoin Monday, freaks. It's your host, Odell, here for another Citadel Dispatch, the interactive live show focused on actual Bitcoin and freedom tech discussion. That intro clip was used just for laughs. I think that happened today on CNBC. I don't know what timeline we live in, but that was just pure slop. Even Joe seemed like he was tired. He was getting tired. Guys, we have a great discussion lined up. Before we get started, just real quick, Dispatch, as always, is funded by our audience directly. No ads or sponsors. It is supported by viewers like you supporting the show with Bitcoin donations. There are three main ways of doing that. You can do it with Nostr after the show ends by zapping the video. You can do it in our live chat, which you can find at citadeldispatch.com/stream, which has Bitcoin enabled. Or you can zap on podcasting 2.0 apps like Fountain Podcasts. The highest zap from last week was from Cumrocket, Ride or Die Freak, with 21,069 sats. He said, "Thank you, sir." He also told me separately that payment might have failed because of poor liquidity on my node. Thank you for trying. I appreciate the support regardless. Guys, today I have return guest, good friend, Seth for Privacy here, talking about his new project. He relatively recently joined Cake Wallet, and they have some amazing Bitcoin integrations that we'll be talking about today. Seth, how's it going?
It is going great, man. Yeah, tired after a long Vegas week. I know you skipped the fun. You abandoned us, but some of us were out there, presenting, interviewing, chatting with 30,000 people about Bitcoin, and unfortunately getting asked about Ripple a few times.
Did you talk to all 30,000?
So it feels like it. It feels like it.
What they showed Ripple as on the price chart, right? They still do that. I don't know why they still somehow it's still got some semblance of relevance. Pretty sad to see.
Well, it's crazy.
I mean, let's start there since you brought it up. First of all, I felt absolutely zero FOMO whatsoever not being in Vegas. How was it? What were the highlights? What were your takeaways?
I mean, similar to you, I would think. I wasn't there for the main stage stuff. Like Ross aside, there was nothing for me personally, and that's not to slam the Bitcoin Mag guys, but nothing for me personally on the main stage really. But the open source stage is always just fantastic. There's so many people that get to come together that you don't normally get to have conversations with. And that's something that I really, really appreciate. I mean, unfortunately, I was working a booth the whole time. So I was basically talking to people 10 hours a day. I got to do a panel and a presentation, which was a blast as well. But I didn't get to see anybody's talks or anything.
Was that on the open source stage?
My panel was open source stage. The presentation was to the dev zone, which I think was the Lava dev zone this year or something, which is a smaller side stage.
How was the venue for the open source stage? What do you think the seating capacity was?
It was a lot bigger than last year for sure. I think it was probably
1,000 people.
Probably about 1,000, yeah, I would say, and that's pretty well attended. Yeah, I felt like again, I didn't see it throughout all the different talks, but being up there for my panel, it felt like it was there were probably a good 500-600 people in there at least.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot better attended than I expected, honestly, which is good to see. I mean, that's the signal there, 100%. That's the signal there. So it was great to be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, the open source stage has a close spot in my heart because for many years there was the Odell stage. To the new freaks, I consulted for Bitcoin Magazine from 2020 when there were 8 employees to 2023 was my last showing. So it was 3 conferences. It was 21, 22, and 23. Mm-hmm. And I will say that despite people might not just agree with all the decisions made by Bitcoin Magazine. David Bailey and leadership there were always very supportive of the open source initiative. We championed giving developers free tickets. The first one was this tiny dome we had for the open source stage. It was like a sweaty nerd tent. We thought there was air conditioning. There wasn't. They were always good about not putting shit sponsors on the stage. Mm-hmm. It was basically a loss leader, never made a profit. And it got bigger and bigger. And it was good to see that after I left that they continued the trend. It was not a given. It was not a given. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. People don't realize their team is absolutely tiny. And then the last piece I will say on that is all these conference centers are union run. So live streams cost way more than they should. So that's why they never live stream that stage. They usually only live stream the main stage. But everything is recorded. So I presume we'll start to see those panels and presentations get released over the next few weeks as they cut up the content and post it. So just keep an eye out for that. I'm sure there was a lot of good stuff there that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but that makes a lot more sense why that wouldn't be live streamed because they had all the gear and everything there. So yeah.
As soon as you press the live button, it goes up 100x.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
And internet too. The internet is all unionized. Mm-hmm. It's all a fucking mess.
That explains why it's also have internet. There was no Expo internet. There was no
there you go.
Crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And that's also why it's impressive that they accept Bitcoin too, because you have to it's the unions try and block everything, and they've been accepting Bitcoin. I think for all their events, they've accepted Bitcoin, or at least all the ones that I was part of. I think in 2019 they accepted it. It was the only one I wasn't.
It's before my time.
Therefore. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Seth, Cake Wallet. When did you join Cake Wallet?
September. So 9 months already. It's absolutely flown by. But yeah, last September.
And your title is vice president. You're the JD Vance of Cake Wallet.
Yes.
You're not like the VP of something. You're just VP.
Just VP. Yeah, just VP. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was an awesome opportunity. I've known Vic for a long time. I know we were chatting a little bit before we hit record, but I've known Vic for a long time. He's one of the most generous and kind men that I've ever had the privilege of getting to hang out with. Met him a long time ago at MoneroCon in 2019. So before I got more into the Bitcoin scene, that was my first conference I'd ever been to, and we just always have had a loose friendship since then. But yeah, I mean, the opportunity came up for. Really, he needed somebody to run the business, run the day-to-day. And obviously, I'm deeply passionate about all the things that they've been shipping. They had already shipped silent payments before that. They already kicked off the effort around Payjoin before that. Obviously, started as a Monero-only wallet originally, so a privacy ethos at its core. So there was already a clear alignment there, and I'd gotten to spend a good bit of time with the team as well last year at a conference, just getting to hang out with them at dinners and stuff. And just absolutely fantastic people. So when the opportunity came up, it was a no-brainer to jump over and really get my hands on a lot more in the privacy space, especially from a Bitcoin perspective. Because there's so much that you can build today that's really hard to build because no one else is building it yet, unfortunately. And it's I think just the perfect team to jump into that with. But yeah, VP. Pretty much running the day-to-day. Vic's still involved and getting more involved now that a side business of his is a little more chill. So loving that as well, but really great to be able to, just do a lot of the product design, help fantastic devs be able to ship more fantastic releases, and been a blast so far.
I love it. So, okay, where should we start here? First of all, I want to say that a particular passion of mine since helping to launch 1031 is the idea of profitable, FOSS, self-custody focused businesses. A lot of people say it's not possible.
It is.
Cake Wallet is one of the exceptions or one of the trailblazers in that front. So it's incredibly impressive that you guys are fully MIT licensed, fully FOSS, anyone can fork it. But you actually have a sustainable, profitable business model. So I want to put that out there because it's an exception to a rule right now. But hopefully, as we start, charting this path into the future, where we'll start to see more profitable FOSS businesses. Yeah, I see Rob Hamilton in the comments, co-founder of AnchorWatch. I think 1031 is the largest investor in AnchorWatch. He was on the show, and I was trying to get him to make his self-custody wallet open source. So we had a bit of a back and forth. Well, as you can see, Rob, I see you in the live chat. It's possible. Someone's doing it, and commendable. So Cake Wallet, self-custody wallet, available on Android and iOS. Is it available on desktop?
It is, yeah. I would say the mobile experience is definitely the best right now. But one of our goals for the second half of this year is revamping the desktop from the ground up, especially for power users, trying to bring much better coin control, better hardware wallet support, trying to make something that can grow with you, just like the mobile app. But I'd say the desktop app is kind of I don't know if I should say this as the VP of the company, but kind of a second-class citizen right now to the mobile app. So mobile is definitely the best experience, but we are on all major desktop platforms as well, and lots of work coming that way over the next 6 months or so.
I love it. Okay, so self-custody FOSS wallet available on pretty much every platform. You already stated you supported Monero first. Then you added Bitcoin, and you have a bunch of other shitcoins in there too, right? It's
some that I'm cool with, some that I'm going to keep fighting Vic to remove.
Do people use Nano? I was clicking around in there.
Surprisingly, yes. I mean, not it's not like huge, I would say. So I'll caveat everything I say about usage with the fact that we care deeply about privacy, so much so that we have no logging, no analytics, no usage info. We don't know anything about the users of our wallet, who creates a Nano wallet, how much crypto you have, obviously anything like that.
So you don't know how much Nano I own?
I don't. I can assume. I think I can make a pretty good assumption. I think the heuristic there is pretty high, about probably 100% to having 0. But you never know. Maybe you're secretly a Nano shill. You're one of those bots in my replies over the last 5 or 6 years. But yeah, not Nano. I don't think is a huge one. But yeah.
So I mean, I guess we're starting with the hard hitting questions, because I don't want you to necessarily like alienate your user bases.
Yeah.
But what is the thought process there? Because like Nano was something that like I was arguing with people on like the Nano bot army. I was arguing with them like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like something that I hadn't even considered. Let me put it this way. I completely forgot about them until I was testing out Cake before the show.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say the same. I forgot about them until I started at Cake. It's never been a concern of mine. A lot of the stuff was obviously added before I joined, so like some of the stories there aren't huge. I think the clear one for Nano though is just that it has been something that people actually like to use and spend, but it does seem like it's died out. Like the idea behind it was always one that was focused on spending, but I just haven't seen much life there. But we do definitely get like some of the coins we have, like literally no one even opens support tickets or something. So like those are ones that we probably would remove. But Nano, we do get some signs of life, some people posting on socials about using it to do things, but it's certainly not a top tier coin or anything.
So anyway, I'm not going to ask you to like shit on specific sets of users, but
we can just go cryptocurrency by cryptocurrency. I can see how many people I can piss off in one recording. We said before the show that I really like this fit for you because both the Monero maxis and the Bitcoin maxis hate you, and I just feel like it's just a really ideal situation for you to be in. No, but just big picture, like, is the plan to flood the app with even more shitcoins, or is it maybe reduce it and be a little bit more focused? Yeah, I mean, I think generally the plan is reduce it. Obviously, that's something you want to approach carefully as a self-custodial wallet, because obviously if those users haven't backed up their seeds properly or something, and you're
kind of locked into the tech debt.
Yeah, it's a little bit painful. Like obviously it can be done. We removed one recently. That had been coming for a long time. It was called Haven. They finally shut down the project. They should have. It was like a privacy-focused stablecoin, but the devs
was it a fork of Monero?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was supposed to have like this algorithmic stablecoin that you could move back and forth between the base asset and the different stablecoins. Again, interesting in practice, but they got hacked like.
I don't think that's ever worked
over the years. Yeah, I've given up on algorithmic stablecoins. I think they're doomed. If someone proves it and it works for like 5 years, maybe I'll be interested. But it's just Tether.
It's just Tether and then Bitcoin Standard, I think. But we'll see.
I think generally though, it's reduced. Like my perspective is, like it or not, we're in a multi-crypto world, and people, the vast majority of people, not the vocal minority on Twitter or something, but the vast majority of people use multiple things. Most of them save in Bitcoin. Many of them spend in Monero. Many of them spend in stable coins or use stable coins as an escape from their broken fiat. So like my vision, and I won't say necessarily it's exactly what Cake will do, because obviously I don't own Cake, but my vision is that we embrace the tools that people are using for freedom, and focus heavily on those, making it much easier to achieve privacy on Bitcoin, making it much easier to use Monero day to day, making it much easier to use EVM chains for stablecoins. As painful as that is, I'm still very torn on the whole stablecoin topic, because I know it's helping a lot of people, while at the same time is basically a CBDC. So that one's a little bit harder for me, but that's kind of the way that I'm approaching it. And some of the stuff that's been in the wallet is like very interesting technical approaches or unique privacy coins, that sort of thing. That's interesting and doesn't really cause too many problems. But focus for me is really trying to embrace like what is providing freedom to people around the world, and how can we best serve that. And as I'm sure you know, unfortunately, a lot of times that's not Bitcoin, even though it should be more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm scrolling through the shitcoins. I see you have Tron support, so I assume that also supports Tron Tether, right?
Yep.
Like that one makes the most sense to me, because Tether, you're just trusting Tether regardless. So it doesn't really matter what it runs on, and the world is running on Tron Tether right now.
Unfortunately.
And the unfortunate reality is if you let a bunch of bad wallets be the only ones that support Tron and Tether, then you have, hundreds of millions of people using bad wallets because they want Tron Tether support. And this was something that we struggled with at Strike. And we eventually just added Tron Tether support. We were like, we support Citibank in America. And like in Argentina, like their dollar rails they want is Tron Tether. And Twitter got really angry at us. And then usage numbers went through the roof. Like it was just crazy. Like people wanted to get away from Binance and Trust Wallet. And so you kind of had to support it. And I think it's probably a net benefit, but also probably a corporate bank digital currency and has a lot of the same issues. But it kind of is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But I think a lot of people overlook the kind of top of funnel nature that stablecoins can be, or even other cryptocurrencies where maybe they're not ideal. But when they're in a wallet that also heavily pushes things like Bitcoin privacy tech, Bitcoin self-custody, that pushes Monero for spending, like these things act as a funnel. And the little data that we do have, which is basically just from talking to our exchange partners, the volume between stablecoins into Bitcoin and into Monero is massive. Like a lot of the time, people are using these as an on-ramp into freedom money. Obviously, sometimes the other way around. Like I think something that I see a lot in the West is people going like basically locking in their gains by just moving to stablecoins from Bitcoin or Monero, so that they can hold that in stablecoins and then get back in later on. But I think something that people sometimes forget is, like you said, like obviously you want people in a good wallet. You want them in something that is actually open source, that does actually help them to self-custody, that does actually provide privacy features. But then you also can act as a funnel to drive them into freedom money. And that's, I think, a lot of the way that I envision this as well, is like if we onboard someone who's just there because they need Tether on Tron, because that's the escape from their broken fiat, they're going to get introduced to so many other things that hopefully will be the start of the rabbit hole for them.
Yeah. I see Free Critter zapped 4,200 sats in the live chat. Thank you, Free Critter. He's asking a question about your business model. Is that the majority of the business model, is the swaps between the different currencies?
Yeah.
So how does that work? Like you don't actually do the swaps. You just get like a referral fee or something when people do it.
Yeah, it's just a fee share from our swap partners. We have a couple aggregators, one of whom is Trocador, who we've had a great relationship with for years and years, and people like Change Now, others. We're very cautious with who we implement to make sure that they're not the heavy shotgun KYC type. We're very obviously careful with that, because that's the main downside of instant exchangers like that. But we're kind of relentlessly keeping an eye on how they handle swaps and what support reports we get, that sort of thing, to try and ensure that they're good. But yeah, I mean, that's the simple edge of it. I think something that a lot of people forget is, like, if we are in a multi-crypto world, embracing that does just have a good side for business. Like people want to swap between cryptos. Again, like I said, most of what we see is people swapping into Bitcoin or Monero. We do have a heavy Monero user base because we started as a Monero wallet back in the day and have, I would say, the majority of the market share in Monero. So we do still see a lot of Monero movement as well. But as we've been rapidly growing in the Bitcoin segment as well, we're seeing people use those crypto swaps to get into the cryptocurrencies they want, which is a cool use case. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's essentially crypto to crypto swaps, which is key to our business. It is buying and selling cryptocurrencies, but that's much smaller compared to the crypto to crypto swaps.
Well, like dollars to...
Yeah. The normal, like, unfortunately, KYC. For now, obviously, we're working on some decentralized exchange integrations down the line, but those are just really hard from a user experience perspective to do well.
What is that, like people using like Apple Pay to buy or something?
Yeah, it would be like debit card, ACH. It would depend a lot on the geography, because like in Brazil they have Pix, and there's different ones that are ideal for each geography. But yeah, the normal stuff, unfortunately, KYC. But that's a tiny percent of our revenue compared to the crypto to crypto swaps. And then the third is our gift card and debit card proxy merchant service, basically called KPay, where you can go and use your crypto, no KYC, no ID, nothing but email address necessary to get gift cards or debit cards you can add to Apple or Google Pay.
That's awesome.
It's been growing really quickly. It's directly in the app. We have some really good improvements coming where you'll be able to redeem those cards in the app as well, like gift cards specifically. So you can like be in the Lowe's checkout and buy your gift card from Bitcoin and go ahead and use it at checkout and use it places where you're not going to be able to spend Bitcoin right now. So that's the third piece of it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice stopgap. I used the Bitcoin company in the past, which gives you like Visa cards.
Yeah.
It's a nice stopgap. Like if you're trying to live on a Bitcoin standard and they don't accept Bitcoin and you just want a no KYC Visa prepaid or something like that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's dive into the novel features you've added on the Bitcoin side. You've added silent payments. So why don't you explain to the listeners what silent payments are, like why people should care?
Yeah, for sure. Have you talked about them at all in previous shows? Like how deep should I go?
Go kind of deep.
Okay.
We've talked about it maybe like a year ago when it was more in theory. I don't know of any other Bitcoin wallets that have integrated silent payments yet, except for maybe Wasabi on desktop.
Yeah, there's a couple that have sending support. There's only one other real one that has sending and receiving support, which is built by the people who won the HRF bounty for silent payments. But it's a silent payments only desktop. I think it's called Dana Wallet. Let me just pull up the list real quick.
Oh, but it's silent payments only and it's on desktop?
Yeah, it's silent payments only. And I'm just trying to pull it up right now. I think it's mobile. Yeah, it's a mobile wallet. I haven't tried it.
To me, it was mostly a theoretical conversation until I saw you added it to Cake Wallet. So why don't you go a little on the deeper side of how it works? Why should people care?
Yeah, for sure. So when I approach silent payments, like I don't want to oversell the privacy benefits. So I think the much more useful way to view it is it's a new Bitcoin address type that brings really good user experience benefits that can also bring privacy improvements. So basically what it is it's a static reusable address that you can give out to anybody. You can put in your Twitter bio, you can put in your email signature, put it wherever you want. And anytime anyone wants to pay you, instead of like a normal Bitcoin address where everybody who ever pays you can see the funds received to that address, the sender will actually use three things. There's two public keys in the silent payments address. That's why you see it's much longer than normal Bitcoin address. And then the sender will use those two public keys plus the inputs to his own transaction that he's sending you, which is obviously a little weird compared to most Bitcoin transactions. But he'll use those inputs and he'll generate a unique one-time Taproot address for you. So this flips a lot of things on their heads, especially sync, which I'll explain a little bit later. But what this does is, even though I share this wallet broadly, anyone can pay it at any time without knowing anything about other people who have paid and without any worry that someone just copying and pasting that into mempool.space or something is going to see other donations that have happened. So it is a good improvement on the privacy side.
It solves the problem that Ross just faced, Ross Ulbricht, because Ross had a static public donation address that he was reusing, just a regular Bitcoin address, and someone sent 300 Bitcoin to it. And then everyone in the world decided to have an opinion on his donation. But if that was a silent payment, then maybe a sleuth after the fact would see different outputs combined with each other in a transaction or something. But it wouldn't have been like this blatantly obvious, like his donation address just received 300 Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like you could do this today without silent payments, but you have to run a server. You're going to have to run something
like BTC Pay server. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like I freaking love BTC Pay. It's something we use every day at Cake. It's vital to what we do. But it's also way too much for the average person to run to have privacy, much less just somebody who wants to accept donations or tips or something like that. So it really like that, the core of the privacy that Silent Payments provides is it allows you to use a single static address, a single string, without having to run a server or anything, and avoid address reuse. Like that's the only privacy piece that it does fix.
Yeah.
And that's obviously very important, but it's not a total solution for privacy. Like you mentioned, you could watch it if like this is Ross's silent payment address and I was a bad actor. I could be dust attacking his silent payment address, dropping some outputs there that I would hope that he would recombine later on with other outputs he had received. And then I would have a pretty good guess that those other...
If he doesn't use coin control, he might include your transactions in other transactions and then other inputs, and then you could see what was going on there. So I would say it's like similar to what BTC Pay server is trying to solve, but obviously you're running a server. And then it's similar to Paynims that Samurai had, BIP47. So what's the differences between silent payments and BIP47? Like there's a trade-off there in terms of syncing, right?
Yeah, so there's a few differences between BIP47, which is the underlying stealth address type, the underlying reusable payment code, to Paynims. Paynims is really just the wrapper on top that gave you the short name, but that short name relied on a central server to essentially
attach the payment code to the name.
Yeah. But that long payment code that you get as part of a Paynim, that's actually your BIP47 stealth address, basically. They don't perfectly follow the BIP spec because Samurai always does their own thing, but it's basically that. So the main differences are twofold. Both systems have trade-offs. Personally, I think Silent Payments has a much better set of trade-offs, but they both have trade-offs. So Silent Payments, the big trade-off, really the only trade-off to me, is that in order to find your payments, it's different than BIP47. So with Silent Payments, again, you don't know where you're going to get paid ahead of time. A normal Bitcoin wallet, all you do is you pre-generate a bunch of addresses and you send them off to a third-party server to tell you your balance, which is obviously horrible for privacy, but it is the norm for most Bitcoin wallets in the space. There's a couple of solutions to this, but they also have trade-offs, especially around user experience. But that's the norm within Bitcoin wallets, is I know what addresses I might get paid at. I'm going to ask a third-party server to tell me if I've gotten paid or not. In Silent Payments, it's actually flipped on its head. You don't know when you're going to get paid or what address is going to be used there. So you can't ask a server, does this address have any balance? Because you don't know the addresses yourself. So instead, you're actually asking a remote server, hey, for these 100 blocks since I last synced, send me the possible outputs that could be mine. And there's a lot of ways this has been optimized already, so that like we know we don't care about spend outputs, obviously, when we're syncing. We don't care about anything that's not Taproot, because Silent Payments is only Taproot outputs as well. And there's a few other things that we can check in a transaction to see if it's potentially our payment or not. So we'll ask for all this data for this set of blocks. This would be the same data for anyone who is asking for sync. So there's nothing uniquely identifying about you. You get that data locally, and then you scan through it using your own private key or scan key to see if any of those transactions belong to you. So that takes a lot more time. Like you're having to download more data, and then you're having to actually do a relatively resource-intensive scan process locally. And so that's a very different user experience than the norm in Bitcoin, where you just say, do I have balance? I'll reveal all my privacy to get this data quickly, versus Silent Payments says, I'm not going to reveal any data about myself, and I'm going to take a little bit longer to scan through this. It's quite quick in practice, but obviously if you're like, especially if you haven't synced your wallet like a month, 6 months, it can take quite a while. On the flip side, BIP47, the way that it avoids this problem is that for BIP47, before someone sends you money, they have to notify you on chain where you're going to receive that money. And they don't notify you of the address, but rather they notify you of essentially where to look for the addresses so that you can derive all of the addresses that this person could pay you at. And this works to make the sync much easier, because now your wallet can just check these op returns and see if any of the op returns belong to them. And then if they do, your wallet knows where to look, and it knows where to derive addresses to send off to a third-party server, just like normal wallet sync. So it's still a little bit more than a normal wallet, but it's just checking op returns, so it's very quick. The major downside is twofold. One, if you do this, the sender necessarily tells the world that they are paying this specific payment code or paynim.
You set up like a network graph almost. It's because you have to have like a pairing transaction.
Exactly. That pairing transaction is very bad for privacy. And it also reveals a lot about you as the sender to the recipient. Like if you're connecting your paynim to theirs as contacts, it reveals who is actually paying the recipient, which can be a bad thing to the recipient. Sorry, not to the entire world. I do want to make that note clear, but it reveals that specific piece to the person you're paying as well. So that's a privacy downside. You're revealing that you're using paynims or Bit47.
Wait, so in this case, like if I'm donating to WikiLeaks
Mm-hmm.
and I do that pairing transaction, like WikiLeaks knows that me as a user is making that pairing transaction.
Yeah, that plus Odell is the one doing
Right.
that. Now, there are some ways that you could work around that, but that's not currently done with how Samurai Wallet had it implemented. Right. But Bit47 has a lot of alternate ways you could implement it. So I'll focus specifically on how it's actually done with paynims. But that's the main downside for privacy with Bit47. But the other main downside is if I want to donate to you once, which is probably the majority of the usage for something like this, I have to make 2 transactions.
Right.
So obviously that's bad for fees. I'm going to spend a lot more than I would otherwise. It's bad for blockchain bloat's not the right term, but inefficient blockchain usage. And it's bad for privacy because I now have to link some output to the fact that I am paying this paynim. And then I am going to have to spend another input as well. So in order to make one donation, I'm going to have to reveal hopefully 2 outputs, because if I use the same output for the public notification as for the actual payment itself, that could be surveilled as well. So there's a lot of downsides that you get a better user experience with Bit47, but you actually sacrifice a lot of privacy, and it's much more block space inefficient. Whereas with silent payments, you do have the scanning trade-off, but there's really good ways to work around this. So in silent payments, when it comes to scanning, there's 2 main things you can do. One, which we're doing right now, and Cake Wallet should be out in a couple weeks, is background sync. So instead of just syncing your wallet when you open it up, which is the norm in Bitcoin wallets, we're used to in the Monero space this whole scanning trade-off of it takes a long time to sync your wallet. So we've already implemented background sync for Monero and other cryptocurrencies within Cake Wallet. We're going to enable silent payments. We were just fixing some stuff on the silent payment side.
Because right now it's manual, right? Like you click a button to...
It depends. You can set it to always be scanning, but it's only always scanning in when you have the wallet open. So background sync will mean that you can tell your wallet, I want to sync daily, I want to sync hourly, or I want to sync every 15 minutes. And it'll do that in the background with your scan key. No private keys are hot. And so at worst, you would have 1 day of blocks to sync, which is like 5 seconds-ish to sync through that. And that's the worst case scenario. You could easily do hourly sync and essentially never have any sync trade-off. The other way you can do it is that scan key that you're using for background sync. You could also just offload to a third-party server. Now that does reveal your silent payment received transactions to that third-party server, but then you're just back at the same privacy from that trusted third party as a normal wallet, but you have all of the privacy benefits versus an outside observer of silent payments.
Right.
Or best case, and this is what we're pushing for, we're working with Josie Baker right now to help to build out better solutions for this, is you're already running a Bitcoin node, you have an Umbrel or a Start9 or something. Why can't you just run a very lightweight service that you offload scan keys to? And that server is always online, it's always in sync. So then you'll get the sync experience of a regular Bitcoin wallet, but with all of the privacy benefits and user experience benefits of silent payments. And that's really the end goal there of background sync for those who don't want to trust an outside observer or a third party, and then offloading the scan key for either someone who's okay with trusting a third party or who runs the server themselves.
Makes sense. So then I see this comment from Cortic, we're gonna respond to it, but I would just, Cortic, I appreciate you. I would rather not get into like a massive debate over semantics during this conversation. But Cortic is saying, You guys are wrong. There is no dependencies on any server. BIP47 is serverless. Paynim.rs site is just a directory of reusable codes. I think we said that. Yeah, refer to Laurent MT, and you do not need a notification transaction here. Laurent explains the metaphor. The way they had it implemented used a notification transaction. Presumably, you could do it out of band if you wanted to, but then you can't restore from seed, which is a really nice. I actually kind of agreed with their trade-off decision there because you want to be able to restore from seed. So that's why they use a notification transaction because the chain is always there. So you could get it there instead of out of band. And the Paynim website was like plus Odell, but it pinged to a reusable payment code. So for years, I would just post my reusable payment code on the Citadel Dispatch website, so you didn't have to actually hit their server. But for convenience, you could just type in plus Odell as long as the server was there and do it. Yeah. So with silent payments, I also see Newtonic is asking, does Cake support BIP 353 for silent payments? I don't know what that means because I don't memorize all my BIPs.
So that's the standardized BIP for silent payments, and we are doing it as to spec as possible, trying to make sure that it's interoperable with everybody else.
Because that's the key, right? Is like people can say Ross shouldn't have done a reusable address. They shouldn't have done just a regular Bitcoin address. He should have done a BTC Pay server. The thing is if you add friction to a donation, you might never get the donation in the first place. And this is something I saw when we had Lionel Shriver on the show, author of Mandibles. People told me a million different ways for her to accept donations, and I just posted a single fixed address. And why did I do that? I did that because I wanted any OG to be able to just scan the QR code and pay her. And sure enough, she received over a Bitcoin in donations. And one of the donations was nearly a Bitcoin itself. It was like a single dude, like probably used an old ass wallet and scanned and paid it and sent a Bitcoin. And by the way, she's still holding it because that has horrible privacy. So you can tell on chain that she's holding it, but also because I talked to her on email and she said that she's going to hold it through the apocalypse, and she's very, very excited to.
Nice.
I mean,
when they come for the gold, she'll have her sats.
She came on the show. She has like $130,000 worth of Bitcoin now. It's like the best podcast appearance she ever made. But so to my point is, I went on a little bit of tangent here. It's really important to be on spec because what we want to see is as many wallets as possible be able to send to silent payments. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not really that useful of a tool. Like that's the hard part of bootstrapping something like this.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the part where like every wallet should support sending the silent payments today. That part is not complex. It doesn't involve any of the sync trade-offs. You don't have to run a special server. That part's very straightforward. And I would love to see every wallet support sending, because that starts this like unstoppable snowball of adoption where if anyone can send to it, then people start to demand receiving to it because they see how well it works. They see how great the user experience is. That's the first step. And like that's where like you mentioned at the beginning, Wasabi Wallet, a few other wallets have implemented sending support. I think Blue Wallet as well has sending support to silent payment addresses, and that's a really good start. But like you mentioned, like if Ross used a silent payments address and not a static Bitcoin address, basically the only people who could pay them. I know like Blue Wallet has it and Wasabi Wallet has it. I've never heard of anybody using it. You're talking like Cake Wallets, 500,000 users, and that's it. And a lot of our users are Monero people. They're not Bitcoin people. That's changing, but you're greatly limiting who can actually pay you. So that's the main downside for now, but that should change. That should change very quickly.
So Newtonic is saying that 353 is the human readable DNS payment instructions. 352 is the silent payment BIP.
Yeah, I'm ashamed.
Are you going to support 353?
We already do. Yeah.
So what does that mean? What is that? Is that like a username? Do I have like a username that can be paid or something?
Yeah, so we support it on the sending side right now. We're still trying to figure out the best thing to do on the receive side. But on the sending side, we absolutely do. So like I have a guide for people to set up their own BIP353 username on my blog. And there's an example.
But you got to self-host it.
Pay there. Well, you don't just self-host anything, but it's just a DNS entry. So it's very simple. You just need to go to your domain registrar and create the DNS entry in a specific way. But yeah, right now we do support sending for that only to silent payments technically because we're not a Lightning wallet yet. So you can't do the Bolt 12 side of that. But the best way to use BIP 353, and one of the reasons why I say silent payments is such a good user experience improvement, is that you can do things like tips at odell.xyz with only a DNS entry, and you can receive payments via Lightning and on chain that are privacy preserving. And that is
a simple text string.
combo.
You don't need any server code or anything like that.
Yeah, which is that's just a huge user experience breakthrough, and that's something that enables wallets to do usernames in a way that's actually privacy preserving, rather than people just like sticking a static Bitcoin address there.
Right. Yeah, exactly what you just said it, but Newtonic also said it. Like I could do Matt at odell.xyz. And then also like I could put my Bolt 12, which is also is just a simple text string. And then I can receive Lightning payments or on-chain payments, no server. One step at a time.
You'd have to be a cake user, unfortunately, but
I
can get you on board. We can get you set up with BIP 353.
Dude, like finally, like we have some level of kind of frictionless donations with Zaps, and it's all just, and like I was saying earlier, like I use my own node, and then I don't have liquidity, and we'll figure out Bolt 12. We need more wallet support on Bolt 12 first. Yeah. And I'm laser focused on that in the back end and in the background between OpenSats and 1031 to try and make that more of a reality.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, it will happen. I'm pretty excited about it. Okay. Before we move to Payjoin, actually, because this seems more relevant to the topic, you have a feature that you rolled out called BirdPay.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the Grug version of BIP 353. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah. So BirdPay is one of many ways that you can pay someone using a username or a domain, something like that. Like we support BIP 353, like I said. We support OpenAlias and OpenAlias v2, which are like multi-crypto versions of BIP 353, basically. But BirdPay was basically us saying, like, how easy can we make it to have as little external dependency as possible for someone to get paid at a username? And a brilliant person on the team, who I actually don't know who came up with the idea, it might have been Vic. He probably was Vic because he loves Twitter. Was if you just put an address in your Twitter bio or your pinned tweet, we can easily grab that via the API. And so you can do things like just enter @Seth for privacy when you go to send a transaction, and it'll auto-populate my Monero address.
It just checks your X bio.
Yeah, it's super, super simple. There's some cool things too that we were just talking about internally, where like we can use the location field that like no one who cares about privacy puts their location in, but you can put a domain in there, and then we can actually scrape that via the API. So you could like put a BIP 353 username in your Twitter profile as well, and enable support that way. But yeah, it's really simple. It's just paste an address into your bio or to your pinned tweet, and anyone can pay you anytime, whether you're awake or not, in a privacy preserving way when you're using silent payments or Monero. Or Bolt 12 once we have Lightning support as well. Yeah, it sounds so simple, but it's magical when you actually use it, and it's what the future of Bitcoin usernames should be. Like our world right now of copying and pasting addresses, verifying addresses, all this garbage is like this has to die for there to be much more usage of people actually paying each other in Bitcoin, because people are so used to cash tags, they're used to usernames, they're used to emails or phone numbers for Venmo, PayPal, etc. If we get there, that user experience looks so much better. And now, because of silent payments of Bolt 12, we can actually get there without sacrificing privacy, which is like incredible. We need every wallet leaning into this and making this the norm, because it really is like a 10x to user experience.
Yeah, I mean, so you obviously have the trade-off of being dependent on the X API, and you have man-in-the-middle risk if Elon decides to swap out your silent payment
swap
address.
My Monero address,
or just ban you from the platform. But in practice, it actually works really well, and that's actually it was a clever little hack when I saw it.
It is. It's a really easy way to do it. Obviously, Nostr has something similar because it's part of your profile itself.
I mean, that's the ideal. We can get into a Nostr conversation later in the show, but in that situation, it would actually be signed, and it wouldn't require permission, and you wouldn't have to pay for
signed by whoever has your private key. which is hopefully you.
Yeah, well, it was signed by someone. At least
Someone.
is better than unsigned. Okay, we'll have that conversation later.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned you planning on Lightning support. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a tricky one. So when I started at Cake, actually, we had just launched a public beta for Lightning, and I killed it. It was like the first thing I did when I joined Cake was like I wasn't happy. No one internally was happy with what the user experience was like, with how many bugs there were and issues we were running into. So like one of the first things I did was just axe our Lightning integration, so we could start fresh. So if you wanted Lightning in Cake before this and it hasn't happened, you can definitely blame me. But I just like, when it comes to Lightning, if anyone's followed me for a while or heard me talk, like I know that I've mentioned this before, but it's just incredibly difficult to do a good user experience that does not sacrifice self-custody. And Lightning has gotten better in some ways for sure, but there's basically 2 wallets right now doing good self-custodial Lightning, and that's Zeus and Phoenix. Yep. The vast majority have pivoted into giving up custody to the Liquid Federation or just giving up custody entirely to a single entity in order to give you a good UX. And that does give you a great user experience. Like you use Aqua Wallet or Bull Bitcoin or any of these that use Liquid under the hood for Lightning, it feels great because it's the same thing as Moon. You're using a chain and you're keeping your funds on chain, and you're just swapping into and out of Lightning when you need to. But obviously Liquid is much lower fees and has better privacy than on-chain Bitcoin. Right. So you sacrifice custody, but you get a good user experience. And I'm just like, even though that's the trend and I know that's the easy road, I'm not comfortable with that. Like the base level of everything we've ever done within Cake Wallet from a wallet perspective is self-custodial. We haven't sacrificed on that. I know we could debate some of these cryptocurrencies. Self-custody means a little bit less when they're less decentralized, but
there's no such thing as self-custody nano, but anyway, continue.
kind of. You have the seed phrase. But I didn't want to sacrifice on the self-custody bar. Like I don't want to go the Liquid route, even though that's easy. And I also don't want to sacrifice on the user experience side. Like we could go self-custodial Lightning, but it's just not there unless we were to dedicate the vast majority of the team's time for a very long time in order to get that done. And like it or not, we don't just do Lightning. We're not just a Lightning wallet. Like the things that we're pushing the most on right now are Bitcoin on-chain things. They're not even Lightning things. So I also didn't want to make it so that we couldn't ship anything else because we're spending so much time on Lightning, when unfortunately it's going to be a very small percentage of our users. And
what about like Moon's setup?
I mean, it would work. We could ship that very quickly. Like it would work for now, but when the fees go up, if the fees ever go back up,
I never understood this argument. It's like if it's already an on-chain wallet, right? Mm-hmm. You're already dealing with on-chain fees. Mm-hmm. I think ultimately what the user wants is just to be able to pay a Lightning invoice on demand. And you're already a swap wallet, right? It's like you're already doing swaps left and right. It's the main business model.
Yeah, I mean,
if I want to pay a Lightning invoice, have some additional privacy benefits on the sender side from it, why not just do a swap and do it? Boom, done.
It's doable. I mean, the main problem is it only works when fees are low.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even now, like, it's 5 sat per VByte right now, but Bitcoin's at $100,000. Like that's a lot more money that you're spending in fees than it was when it was 5 sats per VByte and Bitcoin was 10K.
That's true. You're kind of just asking for a bunch of customer service issues.
Yeah, exactly. So like that would be the easy approach. And like, that's why the Liquid model works so well, is because it is the same approach as Moon. It's just Liquid instead. But I think like for me, the most interesting thing right now is Arc. So like I've been talking heavily with Labs teams and the second team. I've also talked at length with the Spark team. We did an early closed testing group with them, and we're one of the ones that they included in that, which was very kind. And I think that's the best middle ground. I do want to be clear, Arc and Spark are not trustless, but they're trust minimized. Yeah. Specifically, Arc has much better trust assumptions than Spark does. And so in the vast majority of cases, it is trustless. Obviously, there's some very small caveats with Arc, but that's a much better set of trade-offs to me than going to Liquid. But it also means things just aren't ready yet. Like Arc's not ready yet, and there's a lot to be seen on how Arc will play out from a liquidity perspective. And there's a lot still up in the air, but that's currently what we're looking at. Like Lightning is still top of our radar. I would love to get it out by the end of the year, but it's just, I don't want to sacrifice self-custody. I don't want to sacrifice user experience. So I want to make sure that we can do it in a way that fits with our ideals, but also doesn't eat up all of our devs' time.
Oh yeah, we don't have to dive too deep there. You obviously want Lightning support and you want to do it in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, Phoenix is, so it's interesting when if your first principles is Moon, right? It's like, okay, so you have Moon Wallet, and then like Aqua Wallet is Moon Wallet, but with Liquid at rest instead of on-chain Bitcoin at rest. And then Phoenix is Moon Wallet, but in the opposite direction, where it's Lightning at rest, and then you do a swap. You do a swap for on-chain payments. You go in the opposite direction.
Though. That's the cool thing with Phoenix.
It's a splice out now.
Yeah, you splice.
Yeah.
So,
but originally it was a swap.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, actually, the current Phoenix setup is great. There is some privacy and permission issues there.
Yes.
But I actually quite love how they have it set up now. And it's not too bad of a trade-off. Like if the on-chain payments, you're basically just paying whatever the on-chain fee currently is to send an on-chain payment.
Yeah. I don't know how those guys ship what they do. They're brilliant. Like it's awesome to see them work, and then them to be
the way they do it is
like they don't go publicly. They're not speaking at conferences. They're just like shipping awesome, easy to use stuff. It's really cool.
But they also just have like blinders on and like don't really care about like interoperability and stuff. It's just like they have their stack, they ship their stack, they control the whole vertical stack. They have the node, the client, everything, and they just fucking ship. There's like no debates. It's just like we're doing the thing. We're going to provide the best user experience. I appreciate it. Payjoin. You guys recently added Payjoin. I'll just do a quick overview of the beautiful aspect of Payjoin. With Payjoin, usually with a regular Bitcoin transaction, we have the common input ownership heuristic, where all inputs are assumed to be owned by the same person. So to our previous, we were using Ross as an example. If Ross includes multiple inputs, multiple previous transactions in a new transaction, you can assume everything on that input side is all owned by him, and you can combine them together. With Payjoin, the receiver is actually providing an input so that it breaks that heuristic, that all the inputs on the input side, you have the input side and the output side of a transaction, all the inputs aren't owned by the same person. You don't know which ones are the receivers and which ones are the senders. Now, the biggest trade-off there historically has been that both people need to be online. How are you guys handling that situation? Like if I want to pay you and you're sleeping and I want to pay with Payjoin, how does that work?
Yeah, so that's where it comes down to Payjoin v1 versus Payjoin v2. So Payjoin v1 was, like you said, both parties had to be online the entire time throughout the actual transaction for it to work properly. Because essentially with Payjoin, like you said, since you're combining inputs, both parties have to sign that transaction and sign off on it before it can be broadcast. So you need to have some sort of collaboration. That's why it seems like there's basically zero Payjoin v1 adoption, even though transactionally it's really cool tech. From user experience perspective, it basically meant only a merchant running something like BTC Pay Server could accept Payjoins, because only someone like that could have a server online all the time that also had keys hot ready. Like there were too stringent of requirements for Payjoin v1 for it to gain broad acceptance. And especially,
or like if you were with like Samurai, it was like you were in person. Yeah. It's like if you're in person, you both have your wallets out.
Yeah,
you can
which they did. I mean, they did add doing stowaways over Soraban, which was like their Tor-like network, for a little while there.
But you still had to tell your receiver, like, "Yo, buddy, come online. Let's make the payment."
Yeah, I know. Me and you, I think, tried a few times. I did it with Catan a few times. It was like it would always have problems, but it was.
Well, we did it because we could.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was worth it.
But it wasn't going to really scale.
No, and that was the main problem with V1. V2, which is the latest proposal that was just merged in a few days ago by Dan Gould, is transactionally the same. Like on chain, it's going to look the same as a Payjoin V1, which is the same as any Bitcoin transaction, which is the beauty of Payjoin, is that it has no on-chain footprint and doesn't stand out. But what's improved in Payjoin v2 is that it moved from the synchronous model where you're connected to the other person the entire time, or else the transaction just fails, or to now it's an asynchronous model. So now the two parties use a directory server in the middle. Neither of them need to run it. It doesn't matter who runs it because it's entirely trustless. The directory server, all they see is encrypted blobs. And network privacy is provided for both parties using oblivious HTTP. So even if you're not using a VPN or Tor, you are getting near perfect network privacy from the directory server and thus from the other peer as well. But you use that directory server. So like when I send you a Payjoin URI or a QR code, you're getting the location on that directory server where to look for my payload, which is the like pre-signed information that I need to give to you. So I can give you that. I can go offline. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm there at that time or not. You'll get that payload. You add your inputs and you sign the transaction and you send it back to the directory server. And then whenever I come back online, I can sign that and send it off to the network. So it still does require at some point both parties to be online for the transaction to eventually be sent. But if one of us goes online, even for an extended period, or goes offline even for an extended period, we can still make that transaction happen. And in practice, when you're usually making a payment like this, the asynchronous nature just makes it so that little like network blips and stuff don't ruin your transaction, which is what would happen in the past. So in person is obviously going to be just perfect, essentially. Not being in person is pretty damn seamless as well. And there's some cool things too where I think we can make it even better. So like right now, technically you do have to come online at some point during that process. But like something I thought about is those who are okay with the trade-offs of having their private keys go hot in memory on their phone, which is a very low risk. Like to me, I would be fine with the trade-off if someone is pretty hardcore. You can use the background service that we use for syncing silent payments, syncing Monero, et cetera, to look for and sign any Payjoin transactions that are waiting for you on the directory. So that way, like if you've just posted the QR and someone paid it, your wallet would immediately be signing that in the background using that background service. So that's another way that you can do that to even further improve the UX. But it's pretty sweet. And honestly, it works so much better than V1. We've done tons of testing internally, done tons of payments for demos. It's obviously not foolproof. And I mean, we're the second wallet to ever implement it. And there's been a lot of just normal growing pains as the dev kit improves and as integrations improve. But the guys over at Payjoin Dev Kit, Dan Gould, Space Bear, others are just doing fantastic work. And really the beautiful thing of all this being FOSS is that every time a wallet implements it, it gets easier for every wallet to implement it after that. We did a ton of work with the PDK team that will make it easier for others. The Bull Bitcoin team is working closely with the PDK team to make it easier for us and others. And that stuff, again, just snowballs where it's just going to be quite trivial to support Payjoin. And I think we can legitimately get to a place where the default in any cypherpunk wallet will be a Payjoin for Bitcoin because it has essentially no user experience overhead.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had Dan Gould from Payjoin Dev Kit on Dispatch, I guess 6 episodes ago, episode 154. So freaks, if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. Bull Bitcoin's the other one that has implemented it, right? And then also, I think Wasabi you can pay to, but they don't have the
not Payjoin V2, I don't think.
No?
I haven't seen anything about it. I mean, it's certainly possible, but I feel like I consume any mention of Payjoin or silent payments these days.
Wasabi, you can definitely send to silent payments. I don't think you can receive to silent payments. So maybe they don't have send to Payjoin yet
as well with Wasabi. I think they've had that for a while, but I'll have to look into it.
A lot of moving pieces. That's awesome. I mean, what I was talking to Dan about this, like the dream is that we get like Bull Bitcoin does it as an exchange, getting exchanges to do it. So like you can imagine a situation where Strike, for instance, on a Strike deposit or a Strike withdrawal, they support it. They actually get massive transaction fee savings. So they have a strong incentive to do it from a fee perspective. And then obviously like those services are KYC. You're maybe not getting as much of a privacy benefit as possible, but still from an external observer point of view, you're clouding the waters in terms of probability analysis, that someone who's just looking at the chain, it is hurting their probability analysis regardless. So I think it's still a clear net win. To see that kind of, and they're obviously doing massive volumes, right? Like, so,
and that's one of the,
it really does move.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about Payjoin is that there actually is financial incentive for like third parties, especially exchanges, swap providers, et cetera, to implement Payjoin. Like, that's one of the downsides of silent payments is there's no financial incentive to do it. And that's true of most things in Bitcoin. Like, there's not a lot of privacy tech specifically that has a financial incentive there, but that financial incentive is really key because obviously it will help just broader adoption and integration. Like, I don't know if Bull Bitcoin would have done it if they couldn't also do it as an exchange and have it as a fee saving feature. Because I know like their long-term goal is that will be the way you withdraw. It'll always be a Payjoin. You'll be using the Bull Bitcoin app. You'll withdraw to there and it will be a Payjoin because both are going to be compatible and speaking the same language. And I would love to see that happen everywhere else. And it helps everyone's privacy, not just the people participating. That's the other really cool thing with Payjoin is it breaks that key heuristic and helps everyone's privacy.
And the thing too is like exchanges like Strike they've already normalized the pay a higher fee if you want your withdrawal done right away. But if you're willing to wait up to 24 hours, it's free. And people gladly choose that option. Usually they're not waiting 24 hours. They're waiting 4 hours or 5 hours for a big batch transaction to happen. But it's already been normalized in the process. And so then you enter Payjoin into that situation and you actually have this really cool setup where they're waiting 4 hours for a big batch transaction. And maybe people that are depositing are basically just paying directly in a batch payment transaction to people that are withdrawing at the same time. So like I've never even hits the hot wallet of an exchange like Strike. It's just like wins across the board. So I think we could see, cautiously optimistic, but I think we can see significant adoption there in the near term. But what we need for that to actually work in practice is easy to use mobile wallets that support it. So it's a big deal that you guys added it.
Yeah. I mean, it was a no-brainer for us. We had one of our best devs, Constantine, working on it and killing it with the PDK folks. It was a ton of fun. When Strike, Payjoin B2. Put the pressure on. Put the pressure on.
We had no pressure needed. I like I said, I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. I think it would be awesome. I think like I said, I think it's just a win across the board.
One quick.
And then I think once you see an exchange like Strike do it, all you need is like one or two of the big guys do it, and then everyone I think falls in line.
Oh no, definitely. Yeah, that first mover of pressure is really huge. Yeah, I'm hoping that will kick others into high gear when a big exchange like Strike does do it. One quick thing that I wanted to mention on Payjoin that a lot of people get confused by: you can't receive a Payjoin until you have Bitcoin in your wallet. And
it pops an error.
Right now. This is very self-explanatory when you remember that you have to contribute an input to a Payjoin. But this, like, people on our team would forget this. People that I've done it with will forget this. And so we actually added some stuff to the actual like UI to make sure that it's clear to people why.
Well, the current error message doesn't say
it won't error, but you'll see on the receive screen, it'll just say, you might not be on the latest version, but on the latest version we just released on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, you'll see Payjoin unavailable instead of Payjoin enabled, and it'll have a little tooltip that'll tell you why. Because until you have funds you can actually spend, you can't be the receiver in a transaction, which again is a little weird when you're used to Bitcoin, where on-chain you normally don't need, like there's no liquidity requirements or something. But obviously, if you don't have any inputs to contribute, you can't be a part of a Payjoin. But one of the beautiful things of Payjoin is it just falls back to a regular on-chain payment. And part of that QR or thing that you copy and paste will just be a regular on-chain Bitcoin address. So you can always receive a payment no matter what. Address. It just won't be a Payjoin until you have funds you can contribute. So just an important little thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's just a messaging issue. I mean, talking about having the benefit of cost savings with privacy, what is your opinion on Cashu?
I love the privacy from the mint operator. I think that there's not enough discussion about the privacy issues when depositing to a mint or withdrawing from a mint, especially small mints.
Why?
Because your anonymity set of Bitcoin going into or out of a mint can be quite small, especially if mints aren't growing.
But it's Lightning.
Sorry, I mean on
but
chain.
It's Lightning
but yeah,
only.
If it's Lightning only, I guess that's true. Yeah, if it's
like so, yeah, Cashu specifically is Lightning only, which is a bigger UX issue because that means they need to have a Lightning wallet to begin with.
Yeah, no, it's a good.
But I get it, and so that was Callie's hardline stance that he didn't want the mint operator to even have the liability of knowing on-chain history, because Lightning does have pretty good privacy for sender, where the receiver doesn't know which UTXO funded the transaction.
No, you're definitely right. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a good.
You still technically have that issue if it's a really small mint, right? If someone,
depending on who they're connected,
you can still do timing analysis.
A lot depends on if there's multiple hops between you and the mint, or if you're paying directly from something like Phoenix, you could have essentially zero privacy on the sender side. But normally that's true. You would have pretty good privacy because of Lightning. But I mean, to me, like there's two main things that stand out. One is self-custody is just a hard line for me. Like I think the only reasonable use case for something like Cashu or Fedimints for the average person, not for like the kind of village custody thing that I know Obi and others talk about, but the average Bitcoiner today, the only use case for something like this is amounts that are literally too small to publish on chain. So I'm talking like below the dust limit or below the dust limit plus whatever the current fee rate is. And that amount makes sense because you literally cannot self-custody less than that. Like you cannot custody one sat on chain. You cannot custody we're probably about like, I don't know, 600 sats, 700 sats would be really the limit of what you could self-custody today, because you couldn't move that amount on chain without it being below the dust limit with fees. That is like anything above that, I think we cannot compromise on. I think we have to make sure that people can self-custody it one way or another. And that's where like things like ARC and others come into play. But yeah.
So
if you say the term graduated wallets, I'm going to lose my mind.
First off, the term village custody is a new one that I like it. I knew exactly what you meant, which is like Obi talks about this with Fedimint, where like the elders in a village are like the community banking or whatever. There might be a use case there, at least with Fedimint. I will say that Fedimint has been slow to iterate, but recently has started to get some real traction, which is good to see. The Fedimint open source project, not Fedi, the for-profit business. These are two separate things. Fedi builds on top of Fedimint. But the Fedimint open source project has started to make some really significant developments in terms of making it easier to run a Fedimint, which is, I think, one of the key aspects here is that it needs to be easy as you have to reduce the friction to spin up one of these instances privately, because obviously the custodian has a lot of liability on their hands, and it kind of becomes like a whack-a-mole game. And then I guess the second piece you said was graduated custody, which is actually where I was going. I had never heard the term graduated custody. So Zeus, I had Evan Kalutis on, and you mentioned it as two of the good self-custody wallets. I mean, I put Zeus in. I mean, Phoenix is awesome. It's its own little kind of niche in terms of spending mobile Lightning first kind of wallet. But I would put Zeus in a category of like, there's like Sparrow Wallet and Zeus, and like I heavily rely on them. And then just like no one else even comes close in terms of functionality, with Sparrow being on chain and power user friendly. But Kalutis was like, of Zeus, he was a hardliner, self-custody all the way. And he added Cashu, and that's for two reasons, right? Well, first of all, for the small amounts, right? We're onboarding someone, and I mean, we can talk about Nostr later, but you're onboarding someone to receive payments. And at the end of the day, like if they have to pay an on-chain fee, in the beginning, it's cost prohibitive. It's cost prohibitive, and also they can make significant privacy mistakes in the beginning if they don't really understand, what outputs are and what their chain footprint is. So receiving right in the beginning, custodial is nice, and if they're going to do custodial, it probably should be Cashu because it's incredibly private and offers strong privacy guarantees and also gives you offline payments and gives you programmable payments. You can lock things to public keys, stuff like that. So it gives you, if you're going to do custody, it gives you a lot of benefits. And then second of all, it means that you basically have an interoperable custody protocol where Zeus doesn't have to be the custodian, right? Like Evan doesn't want to be the custodian. Cake Wallet doesn't want to be the custodian. He can just plug and play into a wider net of other people running the custodians and taking on that liability. And then the second piece is like he built into his flow. I think it's like you're touching the stove while it's hot, right? Like it heats up, and as it gets higher and higher, he pushes you into a self-custody sovereign lightning channel, right? And obviously he believes in user sovereignty, so he doesn't auto push you, even though you can set that in settings, but it's like, you should really please open the lightning channel and move these funds in. Now, there could be something here, I mean, with just on-chain only, like you could get to a point where, you hit 50,000 sats and you sweep it into an on-chain output, and then the user's on-chain, they're in self-custody. Like, is that model that horrible? Like, what, they're at like $50. They lose $50 in a mint. Like, is it the end of the world before they get to an on-chain output? And they would get significant privacy gains in that situation. I don't know if that's the worst trade-off in the world. Like, that would kind of be a cool feature on Cake.
Yeah, I think so. To me, the main thing, or the main issue, I guess I would say I have with Cashu is twofold. One, it diverts resources away from self-custodial tools. Now, obviously, I'm not here to tell people who, like, what they can work on. Like, obviously, I don't want that to be taken as telling any devs working on Cashu that they have to or should be working on anything else. But it diverts resources away from self-custodial tooling, which I think is a downside. The other one is, and I'll get to the graduated wallet concept, which is kind of the term that's being thrown around for this type of thing that Zeus is doing and others are going to start doing soon. But the other main problem that I have with...
I like the term. I just want to say
it works. Yeah, it works. I don't know if it's Steve Lee. I think
it explains what it is. But anyway, continue.
Well. My other issue with Cashu is just like the incentives are just very broken from the ground up. And I know I'm going to say some things that are going to piss some people off, but I'm just going to roll with it. Nice. The only two options you really have in your mint operator are either they are someone you know and trust, which there's not going to be many people running Cashu mints, but okay, you know someone, they're a public entity and they run a Cashu mint. That's great, but running a Cashu mint is a custodian, and I'm saying the quiet part out loud, but like if Samurai Wallet can be taken down for making money off privacy tools, but not taking custody, a custodial mint that's providing privacy is just like low hanging fruit. It's a terrifying situation to be in. And I wish that was not the case. Like obviously, very clearly, it's idiotic that is the case of where we're at today, but that's an extremely dangerous place to be in. So, okay. We don't do trusted people. We don't do public entities running our Cashu mints because we like those public entities not being in jail. So instead, we do fully non-mints. They're people we don't know. We just trust them with the sats, and maybe there's a trust system, like a reputation system that gets built out or something. But we trust them with the sats, and we hope they don't rug us, which is fine until that grows to a certain size. And then why, as an anon, unless you're just hardcore cypherpunk, bro, why as an anon are you not just rug pulling for 2-3 Bitcoin?
Because you collect fees. You can still there's an argument. So like right now, one of the longest standing Cashu mints is Minibits. I don't know who runs the Minibits Cashu mint, but they haven't rugged yet. Now, I think there's an argument that if they continue to not rug, they stand to make more in fees. And I think you could probably charge a decent amount in fees. Like, I think it's like 1%, 2%, 3% in fees you could get away with probably if you're long-standing and
But
reputable.
that's a lot of fees. If this stuff actually works, the competition on fees is going to drive.
But you have to remember that these are for but these are for transactions that you wouldn't receive otherwise.
But people already don't like Phoenix's.
Like
it's what, 0.4% on the send side, and like something a little bit more, I think, on the receive.
Yeah, I mean, but what are Aqua Wallet's fees are ridiculous.
Oh, I guess because you have to,
when you like mix in the swaps and everything, it's like insane.
Yeah, I mean that is the like
People
that's the
them.
only incentive really for an anon not to rug, is that the long-term incentives have to be better for him to keep running it, to take on the risk, but to collect the fees. So fees would have to be at a pretty high state, I think, to incentivize that.
I mean, there would also be some kind of ideological
for sure. And I know that's probably why people are running the mints that they're running right now. Like, I think
no one's running them for fees.
No, exactly. And I would be hesitant to think that they'll ever be able to charge enough fees to incentivize that, because like then just use a custodian that doesn't charge fees at that point. If it would have to be ideological for you to be using the Cashu mint. But that's where like I think those incentives are kind of broken, where either it's an entity we know and trust, but now they're liable for a lot of things that they shouldn't be liable for, but they just are, if we're honest, or it's the anon mint who you have to hope that the financial incentives are good enough that you don't lose money. And that's where like this idea of graduated wallets is reasonable. I still disagree with how far I think it's going to be taken and is being taken, but is reasonable, because if you're not just a Cashu wallet, but you're a Cashu and a Lightning and an on-chain wallet, you can do things that actively protect the user. And I think you would have to be very aggressive to do this correctly so that users don't get burned, because like users like what's easy. Necessarily, this graduated wallet concept is pushing them from best UX to worst UX over time. And those like obviously the UX of good Lightning, especially with something like Arc or Spark, can be pretty solid. The UX of on-chain can also be quite straightforward, especially in low-fee environments. But it's still going to be drastically worse than a custodial eCash mint, because it's just, you're not doing anything. You're just signing a message. Like it can't get easier than that. So like that concept, I think, will be interesting to see how it plays out, because then you're trusting that users will actually be okay with the worst UX, and some will move with it. And that's where I think like that's the only reasonable way to use something like Cashu, is where you do support the other methods. You are pushing users, even automatically moving funds. I mean, they're using a custodian anyways. I don't know why they would be upset that you move their money from a custodian into their own self-custody for them, especially if you were smart about it and you like looked at when on-chain fees were very low and you automatically did it, even when it was when they were sleeping or something. Maybe you force them in the onboarding to choose the amounts that they will set as the limits to their Cashu balance or something. I think like there's ways where it can be interesting, but there's also there's such a low limit, especially in relatively low fee environments, of what could be self-custodied, that why then wouldn't we just use an all-in-one solution like Arc, for instance, where amounts that you can't exit on chain unilaterally, like below the dust limit or something like that, you can't actually self-custody, which is something that I think a lot of people get confused by.
I mean, okay, I respect all of these arguments. I think you could, and I talked to this about with Evan too. I mean, you could also, to reduce risk, you could do like group submits, right? So you can push the user into like 4 custodians, so like the Titanic model, which I just love the irony because the Titanic sucked. But the idea that if one compartment filled up with water, the boat doesn't sink, right? You just lose one compartment. Now in the Titanic, multiple compartments filled up. And, well, there's a banking conspiracy involved. It's more complicated than that. But anyway, you have that. But okay, but if your argument is that a graduated wallet makes more sense with something like Arc, that's a little bit of a different argument. Now, I personally have been in Bitcoin long enough that I just, unless I can actually use something and see how it works in practice, like I'm not reading your white paper. Like, let me put it that way. Like, like I have a family now, like life's busy. I'm not reading your white paper. I guess ARK has released some kind of are they mainnet now? Like, are they actually?
Not technically, they have released a few mainnet demos, so it definitely works on mainnet. I've used it, others have, but they don't have like a public ongoing mainnet beta. I think they're aiming for that sometime this summer.
But so is that your response? Your response is, we're not going to spend time doing Cashu because we'll do a graduated wallet with ARK instead. And then so you start on ARK, and then ideally you move to on-chain at some point.
I think that's the best potential solution. But you are making a great point that, I mean, if you've been in Bitcoin this long, I'm the same way. I just assume something's not happening until it actually does. So like, I also don't want to bet the farm on ARK because maybe the plan doesn't really work as well as we think. Maybe the liquidity requirements for ARK service providers are too extensive. Like, it certainly could fail, but we're also not at a place right now where we're just like dying for small amount custodians. Like, you can transact on chain for quite low fees.
That won't last but isn't the concern but the concern, I mean, you said this with Moon when I said the Moon model. Like, the concern is that you're not making the decision for today. Yeah. Like, if the fee, like if they're sitting in your wallet and then the fees go up, you can end up in a situation. And maybe the fees, I'm a strong believer that the fees are going to go up. But it is like, I mean, we have mempool.space like on screen. Like, if the fees are going to go up, they haven't gone up yet. So maybe maybe we shouldn't be building in that direction. But I think we should. But that
brings me to my original point of problems I have with Cashu. Cashu is a really great coping mechanism, but it's not a solution. It doesn't solve any of these problems. It doesn't build tools that are better in adversarial environments. It kind of copes with current problems that exist in Bitcoin today, and it deals with them today, but it doesn't solve them in ways that could better improve things in the future, if that makes sense. I feel like that I worded that very weirdly, but essentially all of the time investments we're putting into Cashu, which to me is kind of like a coping mechanism with the failures of Lightning and the failures of self-custodial UX in Lightning. The time and resources we put into that is time and resources that isn't going into something like an ARK or something like a Spark or something like Covenants or who knows what. Like, you could name whatever it is, but that time could be going into that, but instead it's going to something that becomes this coping mechanism that works today, maybe. But if we enter another adversarial environment,
it definitely works.
No, today. I know, but well, as long as you don't get rugged or your mint doesn't mess up their DNS and lose all their money or something like that, but
then you lose $50.
Yeah. But also for these people you're onboarding, if they're losing money, that's kind of bad UX as well.
Look, you're a friend, so I'm going to feel like a dick before I say this, but like, you support Nano, right? So it's like you're onboarding them to Nano. So like, I feel like you can't really.
I do not personally support Nano. Just so we're clear, Cake Wallet does support Nano, but.
I feel like that argument, it's a little bit paternalistic, like it does. There are real benefits. And to me, it's more comparable to something like a bird pay, right? Which is you're operating in the world we're in today, and you're providing a useless feature, a useful feature to people today that they are in demand of, which is to be able to easily accept payments without having an on-chain fee burden, without having any complexity of channel operations, or you just have a professional routing operator that is, effectively running the mint. And you have programmable offline payments, which, like, when you start to talk about like having the type of tap to pay, Apple Pay functionality, the ideal situation is to be able to do that offline, because if people don't realize, like, part of the reason why.
I mean, not offline, but how often are you offline? And
you can't do it offline.
It's 2025.
I mean, I think like if you're in Costa Rica, for instance, like Apple Pay works amazing, and one of the reasons it works amazing is because the payer doesn't have to be online. And I think people skip that. Like, if you're sitting there for even 10 seconds, like, the UX is miserable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So And then, of course, you have the village custody, but I'm not going to pretend like the village custody is like a real. It's happening. Concept. Supposedly, there are villages, but that's not. I'm not going to sit here and do that argument. Anyway, I think you have reasonable concerns. I think you're thinking about it the right way.
Yeah, I know. I feel like old man yelling at clouds talking about this stuff because it feels like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm too hardcore with this, but it also just feels like a line that is very dangerous to cross from a Bitcoin culture perspective. And I feel like once we cross it, it gets very hard to uncross it.
But we've already crossed it.
I know. I know. That's why am pretty like bold about the things I say with this. Cause once people get that taste of the custodial user experience, it's very hard to move away from that. And we've seen that in Lightning. We've seen that in people being totally fine with using exchanges for custody. And I'm worried that this will be that same type of like gateway drug to being fine with custodial solutions for a lot of Bitcoiners. But I also understand the practical concerns of like, I want something that I can use today that's simple and easy and provides good privacy. And Cashu is that. So like, I totally understand both sides, but I do feel like I'm like more on the hardcore side. I did have one more thought, and I don't know, I'm sure someone's thought through this before, but like the only thing that I really would want to make it easier to onboard people is like when I onboard someone, like I onboarded a couple people to Phoenix this week just so they could buy Steak and Shake while we were in Vegas. And like as a Bitcoiner who wants to onboard more people, I would be more than happy to just pay the channel open fee for the end user. Like a way.
But you could do that. Just send them more
I know,
money.
but it's like I wanted to send them $25 and then they end up getting like 21 or something. Like I have to manually compute how much is the on-chain fee going to be, how much is the channel.
Just send them $50.
just keep sending more money. There you go. That is an approach. But I feel like even if just like every Lightning wallet had like an onboarding mode or something where like you hit a switch on the receipt screen.
Yeah, I mean, Phoenix could just put the fee. Phoenix could just put the on-chain fee in the invoice.
Yeah, that would be the ideal.
That's it, right?
I don't know if you actually
like the user could put $25 in their invoice, and then Phoenix could really charge $26 in the invoice.
Like that would be my ideal, because to me that would really solve both worlds. I feel like hopefully most Bitcoiners out there who are onboarding people would be fine with parting with some sats to get them up and running with a good self-custodial UX. And like, that's something I would be more than happy to do, but isn't really supported by any wallets out there that I know of like expecting the payer. I don't know. I always get those backwards. The payer to front the cost for the channel open so that user doesn't have to deal with those initial self-custody costs. And then they just make payments and they're on the Lightning Network and they don't feel that pain.
I mean, the real controversial statement is when I onboard someone to Phoenix Wallet, like my nanny, I have them, first of all, I send them a larger amount, right? So like I send them $100+ So like you get away from those constraints. And then the second thing is I enable cloud backups.
Yeah.
And I just pop into the cloud. It's like, yes, like Apple and the NSA can like rug them.
Yeah.
But like
for most people, that threat model is fine.
Right? At least in the beginning, right? And we're comparing it to something like Cashu or comparing it to something like Primal's custodial wallet or Strike's custodial wallet. Like those trade-offs are way worse.
The caveat I'll say is if done right, I don't know how Phoenix does their cloud backups right now, but if done right, you can do it to iCloud Keychain or Android Auto Backup, which are both end-to-end encrypted. So Google or Apple could not rug you unless obviously they have
I don't know
malware and how it works. But if you do it right, you can do it in a way where only the user can recover funds or someone who hacks their account, obviously, that's the main downside to me. But that's something that like the foundation guys have done with Envoy is for just the hot wallet component. Obviously, you can do it in a way where you would just rely on your Apple or Google account being secure. And I think that's actually a very novel thing.
But my understanding with Apple iCloud backups, like you have to optionally separately in your Apple iCloud settings, go create it end-to-end encrypted and like write down the seed, like there's a different, it's not a seed phrase. It's like numbers.
So that's the distinction. iCloud or iCloud Drive, whatever they call the drive portion, isn't end-to-end encrypted by default, but can be if you use advanced data protection. But iCloud Keychain is always end-to-end encrypted by default. That's where your passwords,
Well, what is it encrypted by? What is the secret?
Your Apple login. So anyone who can get into your Apple account can get it.
Okay. Got it. I will say that Phoenix does a really good job. That it scares the shit out of the user when they enable cloud backups. It's like Apple and the NSA will rug you. And like you have to press OK and then it goes through, which I like if you're going to do it, like I appreciate that aspect to it. Okay. That was a lively discussion on onboarding and custodial. By the way, Steak and Shake, the buns have seed oils in them.
The fries do too.
And the fries still have the fries come with seed oils. They just don't fry
Speaking
them
of being rugged,
they fry them.
I know. I didn't learn until I was standing in Steak and Shake's line, and then someone I was with was like, "Oh, by the way, the fries are initially fried in seed oils, and then they freeze them, and then they send them, and then they fry them into
and then send them."
Like, what? It's a scam.
Everyone's a scammer, but at least it's a good, it's marketing, but at least that's a marketing thing now that people want to be seed oil free.
It's true. That's true.
Slow and steady. We don't live in a vacuum, and little benefits are. I see the purpose of saying Breeze has Nextcloud support. I mean, that's great, but like if you're running a Nextcloud self-hosted instance, like just use a seed phrase.
You're about as hardcore as they come at that point.
Like I feel like you can use a seed phrase, but that's good. I see Phoenix is extremely expensive. Yeah, I mean, I think the fees are kind of reasonable on Phoenix. I get it. Yeah. I understand it. What else do we want to talk about while I have you here? You want to talk about Nostr?
Why not? Piss off some more people. It's my way.
So, I mean, can we at least get bird pay for Nostr?
I think it already works. I need to double check, but the main problem right now is we talked about, we don't have Lightning. So if you're just doing like LNURL or something, obviously that's not going to work within Cake. I think if you put a silent payment address in your Nostr profile, it does work, or Monero address.
But what username would I type in? My NIP5?
Yeah, your NIP5 should work. I guess your NPub as well. I'm like 99% sure this works today. I just don't use Nostr, so I haven't tested it in a long time, but I'm pretty sure it does work. But
so you're a Nostr bear. Like you're done with Nostr. It's a dead project to you. It's over.
Before I answer that, I want to interview you. So you made this switch. You cut all ties to the modern world.
Yes.
You switched to Nostr and burned your however many hundreds of thousands of followers. What has that been like?
250,000.
Real talk. How has engagement been compared to what you're used to? Do you feel like it's been good for your overall reach to the audience you want? Has it been bad? Like, I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on what that has been like, because very few people have actually made the 100% switch from Twitter to Nostr.
There's a few of us. There's Gigi has, Pablo has. I don't know of any other larger
You're
accounts.
in rare company.
Obviously, I think I was the largest account that did it, or at least voluntarily did it. Like I was at like probably about 250,000 followers. Like at this point, I'd probably be at like 400,000 followers. Like it was growing pretty fast. Even without me posting, it was growing. Just from like the backlog of like 10 years of proof of work on that closed platform. I mean, it was strictly a horrible financial decision. Like just really bad career-wise. It's definitely not. It was not a positive for 1031 as a business. It was good for the soul.
Oh, yeah, social media is the worst.
But
Twitter's the worst. I won't get that.
but financially, definitely was should have kept the account. I do think that it was good for my family, right? Like I think first of all, I never wanted to be an influencer, right? Like I kind of, like people think influence, like Bitcoin, large accounts on Bitcoin are bad today. Like they were way worse in 2017, I think. I don't know. They've always been bad. Let me put it that way. They've always been bad. And I was young, I was unmarried, I didn't have a family. I felt like I could improve the situation, or I could add something of value to the discussion, right? And I slowly hurt my own personal privacy, and went into it. And it got to the point, and then I started, and I used it to bootstrap everything, right? Like Twitter is where I bootstrapped my whole network, all my friends, like all my good friends I met through there. It's where we bootstrapped OpenSats. It's where we bootstrapped 1031. It's where we bootstrapped Citadel Dispatch and Rabbit Hole Recap. But I was getting to the point where it was like a decision had to be made, right? And a decision had to be made. And like I was getting to the point where I was becoming kind of a niche celebrity, right? Like I was like, I would go, if I went to a conference, for instance, like I couldn't walk around, especially once money got involved. Like once people thought they could get a check from 1031 or OpenSats, it was like every other conversation was someone asking me for money. And the question really in the back of my head was like, are they going to ask it for an open source project, or are they going to try and get funded through 1031? It's like, which angle are they going to get it from? And the only time I would get ignored was if I was walking with either of the jacks. Like if I was walking with Dorsey, or if I was walking with Mallers, the moths would go to that flame instead. And of course, like it's awesome. Like I love the freaks, and it was like there was a lot of love that was happening. Like, thank you so much. Like you helped out my family so much. Like blah blah blah. But there was like also a bad element to it. Then there was like, I mean, I remember like a month before I deleted, like 2 months before I deleted, I was in Costa Rica and I was sitting at lunch in the middle of nowhere, Costa Rica. And if you're listening to this right now, like bless your heart, I appreciate you, but still. Some random freak walked up, interrupted our lunch, was like, Odell, so grateful for you. Thank you so much. The middle of fucking nowhere, like with my family. So I did come at it from like a point of view that I had nothing to lose, and that I needed to lower my
profile
a bit. And I didn't want to do that by like destroying my reputation, shilling a shitcoin, like again, taking one last rug pull out. And instead, in this way, it could be a positive way. Like if I could bootstrap, if me doing it could help bootstrap something that I think needs to happen, which is digital comms is too important to have in control of a proprietary closed source big tech company. Let's do it. And I felt like I had nothing to lose. I've definitely seen since then, like from a financial perspective, that there has been some negative consequences that maybe I should have waited a little bit longer. But then also at the same time, like I was addicted, right? And I've seen it happen to other people. I mean, I'll use Dorsey as an example again. Like Dorsey was Nostr only for a bit, but he had the account there. And because he had the account, the stock price goes down, and he goes back to Twitter, and he goes back to Twitter, starts posting over there because you can't help yourself. I literally can't go back. Like if I did go back, I would have to create like a fresh account and start from zero or whatever, and do the
you burn the boat
again. So it does, from a self-control point of view, it helps. Now I do think it's going to be a long grind. I don't think Nostr is inevitable by any means. I mean, I still don't even think. I think Bitcoin is more or less inevitable, but I don't think Bitcoin as freedom money is inevitable. I think there's still a lot of work to be done. But I think we need something like Nostr for so many reasons, and we need it from a permission point of view. We need it from a censorship point of view, and we need it from a verifiability point of view. Like the amount of AI slop and stuff we're going to start to see, and like psyops on a whole nother level is crazy. And to have that all happening, with puppet masters and unverified, like you never know if you're shadow banned or not, right? We were talking about earlier on YouTube. Like I'm pretty sure I'm shadow banned on YouTube. There's no way for me to verify it.
No, unless
I have no idea what's happening there. You don't control your destiny. So I think it's a noble cause. I mean, I think it's something that would benefit humanity. And I think I probably only have so many more years in the public eye, so I'm going to try and throw as much weight behind it as possible is kind of the calculation. But yes, to your answer, if you're asking me as a friend if it's financially prudent for you to delete your X account, I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say don't.
Which makes sense. And I mean, like, I always knew, like, you knew there were consequences to deleting your Twitter, but like you're that guy who actually has scruples and actually has integrity and actually has like an ethos that wants to push this stuff forward. So like your willingness to do that was crazy, honestly. Like that was an immense move, and I think is something that has been a huge driver behind Nostr so far, has been that you were willing to do that and brought so many people with you, and they're spreading good content there as well. So I definitely understand that. And I mean, like when it comes to Nostr, for me, like I agree on all of the human good stuff around it. Like I definitely agree we cannot rely on something like a Twitter as our like place for social discourse. Like that has been proven so many times of how easy to manipulate it is, of how harmful social media as it is today is. Like the psychology of it is very broken. So like I definitely echo that, and I think Nostr is a good fallback. I think like there's some things about how Nostr is built that I think are not great for social media, and it provides a lot of value in other ways as a protocol. Like again, that's where it can get a little confusing. Is like Nostr is a protocol. Social media on Nostr is its own separate thing, and Nostr as a protocol is very fascinating, especially just that it has this native understanding of key pairs that can be really useful for verification and other things. For social media, it's a little weird, mainly because of the privacy concerns that come into play with how you actually transmit and get posts by other people within the social media network.
Yeah, but how are you going to ever get rid of that? Like, that's just an internet thing. You mean like IP address leaks?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, the main difference is that instead of having a single known trusted third party, which is still a trusted third party, still problematic, you have a lot more unknowns, especially when it comes to media hosting within Nostr. And there's a lot of.
But you could do that with you could do that with Nostr on. You could, if that's the trade-off model you want, you can do that with Nostr while still embracing the interoperability and giving people the choice of opting out and moving apps without losing their network graph, their connections. Like, I mean, that's what we're doing with Primal, and it's controversial within Nostr, right? But with Primal's hosting a caching server, which you can think about like a super relay, that's pulling all the notes from the relays. So when you're reading, look, 99% of people are lurkers. Yeah. When you're reading, you're not exposing your IP address to different people's media servers or different people's, you're just trusting Primal. Now, obviously, Primal is a trusted third party in that situation, but that caching server is false. Anyone can run one. In the UI, we allow people to switch. You can obviously switch apps to a pure one. Now, on the sending side, you still expose your IP address, but there's a toggle because we were talking to activists who trust the U.S. government. They're like anti-U.S. enemies. They're like anti-U.S. enemies activists, right? It's like, so like they're fine with X, right? Because they trust Elon and they're fine with the U.S. government knowing their information, but they don't want their government to know. And so there's a feature in Primal where you can have us sit in between you and your broadcasts, and then you're not exposing your IP. Now, that's a censorship trade-off because Primal can stop your post from going out, right? But you can always toggle it off or you can switch apps. So you can build these things on top. I think the biggest issue we have right now is like however you want to solve it, key rotation, key security. Your key gets compromised, you're screwed. And I think once again, I think that's solvable. We could easily solve it in a centralized proprietary way. But if we're arguing against the status quo, right? Like if you're arguing against that, you could reach out to X support and they can save you. Like we could do that tomorrow. We could push that feature live and just hold your fucking NSEC for you and make sure no one else takes it. And if you get compromised, switch your password. I think there's more elegant ways we could do that without having that trade-off, and that'll take more time.
Yeah. And I think on like the insect side, the easy route is use something like we talked about for seeds, iCloud Keychain, Android Auto Backup. There's like each of the main mobile platforms has
like
an encrypted part.
That.
So you already trust Apple and Google with the vast majority of your life. Most people, unfortunately, trust Apple or Google with the vast majority of your online personas anyways. And if you're using end-to-end encryption and you have good two-factor, it's actually really good security, but it is a little frightening that there's no going back. Like if you lose your insect, there's no going back. You cannot do anything with it. So
yeah, but I mean, Elon can just hit you with a ban hammer, right? Like we're not in, like the status quo is not great. I mean, American Huddle has had 8 accounts on Twitter, and like there's no cryptographic verification. He's not signing a PGP message when he's just like, "Yo, I'm back." American Huddle 2, American Huddle 3. It's just like, just fucking post. And like, that's the current status quo. But I think also too much has been played on the censorship resistance side, which I do think Nostr offers a lot of promise there, particularly for quote unquote high value accounts that you can't quantify. Like Kanye, for instance. If Kanye came on to Nostr, first of all, I don't know if we're ready, but if he came on to Nostr, there would be like 500 servers that were just dedicated to storing his content. Like literally every note he sent would be signed and they would just be saved by a bunch of people because it's Kanye. Or like if it was Donald Trump, right? Like the president of the United States, the super sensitive accounts that are most prone to types of censorship and shadow banning and stuff. In a non-quantifiable, it's like a Streisand effect kind of situation. I think they get saved. But anyway, my point is that a lot has been pointed out on the censorship resistance side, but I think just the simple idea that everything is signed, and so you can verify the integrity of it. And now we're doing it with media too, where all media is hashed and signed. So you know, like when I'm going to post this, right? It's on YouTube because YouTube has all the apps, right? And people want to watch it on their TV and stuff. So we still post to YouTube, even though
you're shadow banned.
There's not many viewers on YouTube because I refuse to turn on monetization or put the clickbait headlines or anything like that and play the algo game. We stream to X through the 1031 account because my partner Jonathan insisted on blue checking that account, and so it was blue checked anyway. So I might as well just stream out through that. So when the inevitable X dump happens, that's his phone number that's attached to that account. Just FYI, everybody, and his billing address. But the only place where I post where you know it hasn't been modified after the fact is Nostr. And I think that becomes more and more important. It's like you actually have a source of truth. And to not delve into like the op return wars too much, you could then use, if you wanted to, you could use open timestamps and I can prove that this happened at this time. I have cryptographic proof that it hasn't been changed. Because it's going to get wild. Like, I think people don't realize, like, both of us have done thousands of hours of video content. They can make us say anything. They can make us say absolutely anything. And like, so to have a source of truth, and where is that source of truth going to come from? It's not going to come from a proprietary business. Like, it's not going to come from a big tech company. What they're going to do is they're going to KYC everyone. I'm almost positive. Like, Palantir's the back end. X, TikTok, Facebook, they're the front end. Like we talk a lot about X. I talk a lot about X, but that's because Elon is he's the best of the big techs in terms of free speech and stuff. And he's still bad, right? Like he talks one way and then bans a bunch of people in India, bans people in Turkey and stuff, and shadow bans them. So like you can see them in the US, but you can't see them where it matters. But like Facebook has 5 billion users. Like it's not going to be Facebook that offers cryptographic verifiability. They're going to KYC people. They're going to be like, we proved it behind the scenes. You can trust us that it hasn't been changed. And I don't want that to be the status quo. Like I think that's a bad world to live in. And I think it's going to be rough to get there, but it's doable. It's doable. And I think for me personally, what do I care the most about? Is I care about like Bitcoin and false discussion. And how many accounts matter? Like we need like 15 people, 100 people to actually put time in, and then it's actually useful because you have a chicken and the egg problem on the content side. Anyway, I'm ranting, but I bootstrapped Bitcoin Twitter. I was one of the 100 accounts that bootstrapped Bitcoin Twitter. And what did I get out of it? Nothing. They just sold me to someone else. They sold all my shit. Like Dorsey wasn't great when he was running Twitter, but still at the end of the day, he just like
moved on,
sold me off. Him and the shareholders sold me off, and then he can do like, it's not my property. So like maybe we can build something better. Maybe we can't, but that's how I think about it.
No, I'm hopeful. I think like I'm bearish on the idea of Nostr becoming this like normal mass market product as social media, but that's also, I mean, if you ask me about Bitcoin as freedom money or Monero or any privacy tech generally, any freedom tech generally, I'm generally pretty bearish on it becoming a mass market tool. Like, unfortunately, many people are more than happy to live lives with blinders on, and they don't wake up until very late, if they wake up at all, to how broken the system is. So like, again, the vast majority of what I care about are things that are probably going to remain relatively niche. So Nostr remaining relatively niche isn't the end of the world if it does serve human freedom. Like, I don't think it's going to replace Twitter, but if it remains a platform that people,
the bull case is like,
that's great.
The bull case is like 5% of people.
Yeah.
Right. And like, that's like overly optimistic. For all of these things, like Bitcoin is freedom money. It's like 5% of people, and the ability for anyone without permission to opt into that. That's the bull case. And then maybe, and there's some corollaries with Bitcoin here, you know, I could see a world where you could read Nostr notes in X, but you can't read X notes everywhere else. So they like pull it into their walled garden, right? Like they're like the central, if you post on Nostr, you can read it on Facebook. But Facebook doesn't return the favor. And you see that, right? Like, what are the most successful businesses in Bitcoin? It's Binance, it's Coinbase, right? And they leverage the open protocol, but they don't contribute back to it. They have their walled gardens that leverage it.
They want to keep you in the system.
Right? So I could see a world where that happens. And then all of a sudden it impacts more than 5% of people in a positive way. Maybe that's the true bull case. And people will complain about it and whatnot, and just like they do today with Bitcoin.
It has so many similarities to Bitcoin. Like, I think we do need to divorce it from Bitcoin, because one of the problems with Nostr I have right now is that it's like Bitcoin social media. Like, it needs to become more than that.
We have a good Monero community.
Nice. Glad to see that growing there. I think there was a little bit of that.
Did you not see them fighting in the announcements?
A little bit.
In the announcements, it was the Monero bros fighting the Bitcoin bros.
I only saw you fighting the anti-Monero bros. I didn't see the other.
No, they came in a little bit later. We have a decent amount in there.
I think, like,
I mean, there's nothing stopping anyone from putting Monero zaps in.
It already exists, actually. There's a third-party client that lets you do Monero zaps on Nostr posts.
The problem is you need this, like, the whole point of a zap is the social signal. Like, everyone wants private zaps, or you don't actually want private zaps. Like, people want to be the top zap on the post with their little logo, their little face on it. It's like part of that's
the whole point, really. I mean, like, a private zap is just a donation, which is fine. Like, donating is awesome, but it's the social value. I mean, just like if you wanted private social media, that's just called a group chat. Like, go on Signal or something. You don't need Nostr or something like that. But
I don't know. I don't know how we bootstrap it past Bitcoiners. To be frank, me personally, I don't really care. I actually think there's not enough Bitcoin discussion. Like, when people are fighting about Bitcoin, they should be fighting on Nostr. And they're not right now. They're fighting on X, or they're fighting on delving Bitcoin, which, like, I appreciate it exists, but like another walled garden platform, or maybe walled garden is the wrong word, but it's a proprietary centralized platform. Like they should be fighting on Nostr. And we don't have enough Bitcoin content there, in my opinion. But I think there's something to be said. Maybe I look at everything from a Bitcoin lens, but in this world today where we stand, where if the average person goes on X and you onboard them to Bitcoin by putting them on X, an overwhelming majority are going to just buy MSTR or Metaplanet or some shit. And then like a second tier will buy and take self-custody. A smaller subset will buy and take self-custody and rarely spend it or use it as freedom money. And then an even tinier subset will actually then use it as savings and use it as spending. But if you bring them into somewhere like, if you onboard them to Primal or you onboard them into Nostr generally, and their first experience is not buying Bitcoin, but it's shit posting and receiving 21 sats, which by the way, can't receive it on chain, then all of a sudden their first experience with Bitcoin is receiving it as money. And it's a different user journey. So even if we get 2% of the amount of people are coming into Nostr than they're coming into X, which is probably generous, maybe it's even less, it's a way higher percent that are using Bitcoin as money and coming into it as Bitcoin as money. And so they're thinking about that, and then they start to think about self-custody from that direction rather than the opposite.
Yeah, I like the thought process. I think it's very optimistic. I like it. I think my main concern is just like how are you getting these people into Nostr and into Bitcoin?
I deleted my X account, so I need you to show it.
Exactly. That's like
this is what I'm doing right now.
That's the hard part for me. And like I know we've talked about this, and I've talked to some other people about it. But like the reason I have a Twitter is not because I like Twitter. I freaking hate Twitter. I hate social media. Like you, I would love to just disappear tomorrow and not have to do the influencer shtick. I could, but there are not just downsides. There are not just upsides for me. There's also downsides for other people.
I know.
All the people that I can reach on X, 99.9% of them are never going to be on Nostr, or at least not for a very long time. So like, I think it has to be like a multi-tiered funnel. Like I think also if there's no Nostr, we're greatly limited in the amount of like freedom discussions we can have because there's a central platform that can control that. So we need Nostr. I view it more as like a shit hits the fan, break the emergency glass kind of thing, where we need to catch people higher up in the funnel, show them freedom tech, show them things like Nostr, show them things like Bitcoin, and catch them before they've been just stuck in that forever or have been in that for 10 years before they discover Nostr or whatever. And so that's why like I'm hesitant myself to leave Twitter and go to Nostr because I feel like it would be, I don't have to service it.
But you don't have to. I'm not, maybe past Matt was like, delete your Twitter. Don't delete. Just use Nostr more. That's all I'm saying. I'm a much friendlier, I've moved to a friendlier.
But I don't have that much time, Matt.
I'm at a friendlier.
You know how it is, man. I can't post.
But that's why I use Nostr only.
I know.
So I think we are going to get to a place on Primal where you can post on Primal and then it'll auto post to Twitter as well. Because we can't do it in the reverse because of the way the APIs work, but we can do it in that direction. So maybe that will make it more interesting for you, where you can automatically cross post. Obviously, you'd have to do it within Nostr to do it, but we'll make it so it doesn't shadow ban you and it looks nice and shit. Like a Hootsuite or something.
I mean, if you can do that, that would be, a no-brainer. I'd adopt it overnight.
We have that going for you, and then or going for us. And then the other thing I would say is I respect the thought that it's a shit hits the fan type of situation. And I respect the thought that you want to like save people or help people. That's where I came from as well in the beginning. And I justify it by saying that I put in my time. I helped a lot of people.
You did.
I told them to stack sats at the generational bottom. Now it's $100,000. But just know in the back of your head that the reason the shit hits the fan solution will be there when shit hits the fan is because there's a bunch of us building out the shit hits the fan thing. while other people aren't building it out.
I'm legitimately grateful.
Right.
Yeah, I'm legitimately grateful because like I said earlier, like I know what
we'll be
sacrifice
ready
that
for
was, and how painful a lot of the Nostr user experience has been over the years.
It wasn't,
and, like building that is vital.
I delete everything. I delete everything. I've deleted my Facebook way back when. I deleted my LinkedIn. This was just I deleted my Telegram. That was also a bad one. Yeah, there was a point for 6 months where people didn't know how to contact me because they couldn't DM me on Twitter, and I deleted my Telegram. But the people that figured it out were able to reach me on Signal.
You only get the highest of Signal DMs now because there's only like 2 places to reach you.
There you go. You have to put the proof of work in. But anyway, I'm not trying to. Maybe I am. But I'm not intentionally trying to guilt trip you or anything. It's just something.
I don't feel guilt tripped at all.
It's something that obvious. Like I'm getting tired, and so I'm throwing things at the wall to see how we boost adoption, and it has been slower than I expected. And I think part of it is because Elon has done a pretty decent job. Like he's clearly. X has got a ton of users. User growth is going up. Functionality is going up. He's mostly at least hidden the censorship behind the bin in the side. Like people don't really realize it's going on. And it's going to take and then he's obviously friendly with the current administration. So there's not like a back and forth.
But that can change quickly.
So like there's no hot stove pushing people, but maybe it's, that can turn quickly. And also we live in a global world, right? Like, so there's people right now in Serbia or India or Turkey or Brazil that actually probably could benefit significantly from it. And maybe we're not really getting those users right now. But I think part of that is tooling. Yeah. And also that's why I brought you on, because I think Cake Wallet does a really good job of tooling. And we want to lower the friction as much as possible. Okay, last piece. We talked about Nostr too much.
We were forced. There were too many people asking for it. So,
this debate currently about Seedless is safer.
Oh God.
This debate has mostly happened on X. I wish it happened on Nostr. You're on X. You're VP of a self-custody wallet that gives you your seed words, the nice, easy copy button. How do you think about this?
It's a tricky one. Like I understand the approach that BitKey is taking, because they are kind of taking the make it as easy as possible, even if it's compromising on a lot of the things that have been critical to Bitcoin security in the past. And it does it in a way that is very user-friendly, because you're just removing a lot of what are the traditional barriers of entry. I think the biggest issue for me is that at least I only want to build tools that do not rely on me or my company being around long term. Like obviously I hope that Cake Wallet is around forever. I hope that we're wildly successful building self-custody privacy tools. Like obviously that's the hope, but I think all of these things should be built in a way that is the most standard, the most portable, the least walled garden as possible, and the one that provides the best security possible for the user. Obviously, Cake Wallet is very different from something like BitKey, because we're talking about a hot wallet where key management, like the threshold is much lower, because we're not talking generational wealth. Whereas when you're talking about hardware wallets, like the main problem I have with BitKey is twofold. The portability of not offering a seed to their users makes it much harder to migrate off. I know they have some like a emergency access kit or something that they call it.
It works.
It's possible.
I've tested it.
It's possible.
Probably 99% of Bitcoin influencers have not tested it, but I've actually tested the entire flow.
Yeah, and I haven't tested it either, to be completely fair. I haven't had that much time with BitKey itself, but
you install an APK that doesn't rely on their servers, and then you have a PDF that's automatically put in your cloud backup, which if you lose access to your cloud backup, you don't have that PDF. But you could also save that PDF at will at any time.
But only through the
So there's a PDF.
That's the only way you can get the PDF.
No. No, the PDF is like literally it's an encrypted PDF that's encrypted with your BitKey hardware that's sitting in your cloud drive automatically as soon as you set up the wallet. It's always sitting there. It's just sitting there. It says BitKey, break in case of emergency. But you can also download that and save it separately at will whenever. Now, at the time comes, Block cancels you or goes out of business. You take that PDF, you download the APK, you scan it with the APK, you tap your BitKey to decrypt it, and then you have 2 keys. And then you send all in one transaction out to another wallet. So it's actually like relatively clean if you know what an APK is and you still have access to your cloud account. Let's be honest, pretty much a BitKey user in that situation is going to be in full-on panic mode. Yeah. But it works. Yeah. So that's the current.
Which is like the lowest bar. Like that's, if they didn't have that, that would be terrifying. Like that would be absolutely terrifying. But like that is the lowest bar that's absolutely necessary, which I think is fine. I mean, I don't know. It really just, the user needs to be properly educated about that. But I don't think it's the end of the world for it to be like that. But the main problem I have with it is that for their target demographic, it's essentially a walled garden. It's very hard for them to move to something else other than sending the sats themselves. And from talking to lots of people, hardware wallet users who want to migrate, like that's a terrifying prospect for the vast majority of users and not something they would do unless shit hit the fan. So that's my, like, I honestly don't have a huge like care in the fight. I think the only other thing that I don't like is just the screenless approach. Also introduces some trust.
Yeah, the screenless is, they just need it. They need
like it, screen. You could do a really good UX with a screen. Like I really don't think it's necessary to be screenless for their target demographic. And it does have some serious compromises in security. But again, there's very few people that are going to be buying a BitKit that are going to be attacked in the way that a screen would protect them.
A BitKey.
Yeah, exactly. There's a very small threat model. It is important to know and discuss, but that's why I'm not up in arms about the approach. But I think it is valuable that people understand it. And it also should be a good driver for those of us building things that are more traditionally self-custody with seed phrases is how can we continue to make things easier without that full-blown trade-off of being seedless or full-blown trade-off of being screenless, that sort of thing.
I mean, I think it doesn't compete with a typical hardware signer, like a typical hardware wallet where the hardware wallet is trying to protect you from your hot device by being able to verify on a secure screen and approve transactions and hold your keys on it. What it's really doing is making a standard mobile wallet more recoverable in more situations, right? It's like,
it's a good way of thinking about
which is why I see why they didn't add a screen, right? Because it's, if the screen is, if the phone is compromised, like the BitKey is not going to protect you if it shows you the wrong information.
Well,
it would, but if you lose your phone,
you wouldn't have a way to verify what was the correct information.
Right, but if you lose your phone, it allows you to easily and relatively securely recover. And if you lose your BitKey, it allows you to easily and securely recover. And if their server goes down, it allows you to easily. So it's like more of a recovery device, a recovery mechanism than a verification mechanism. Does Cake Wallet support hardware wallets right now?
Just Ledger right now, but we're working on adding more throughout the course of the year.
You're going to just do like the basic QR support?
Yeah, no, we definitely will.
I feel like
we definitely will. I know like we had some people asking about Jade and I don't know that like Cold Card is our normal demographic,
but if you add QR PSBT standard, then you support Jade, Cold Card, Seed Signer, Passport. You support all of them without doing anything.
We technically already have it, just we haven't actually exposed it to people connecting other hardware wallets because we actually have our own app that's not really ready for prime time yet, but will be soon. That is a offline signer app that you install on a second phone, like an old phone or something that you keep offline. And it works using PSBT over UR, all the same functionality. So we already actually have all of it there. So that's why I'm saying like we will have broader support because we already have all of the bones of signing PSBTs using UR, the QR back and forth, all of that actually already in place in Cake. So it's definitely coming. It's definitely coming.
So, I mean, last thing on the seed thing. So when I go to save a seed in Cake Wallet, you give me like the scariest warning. Don't lose the seed, keep it safe. don't send it to support. I think it's like all caps, you will lose your money. From your perspective, like, do you see a lot of phishing and people losing their Bitcoin now, or Monero, or their Nano, or whatever?
No, I mean, the thing that has remained true across working at Foundation, across just being an educator, across working at Cake, is it's just people losing their money because they don't back up their seed. Like, almost no one is losing their money because someone gets access to their seed because they had it in a screenshot or something. It definitely happens. Like, I think I've heard.
Well, the phishing happens, but right? Like, people just send it to support or send it to a fake Telegram contact.
But even that is more rare now, actually. I haven't heard of any cases of that within Cake Wallet. The one that we've had to put in like extra protections against, and the most common one, is on EVM chains. Adding fake stablecoin tokens is like the stupidest scam, but it happens and it works so well, where an attacker will convince someone to add a contract address for a fake version of USDT or USDC or something. They'll sell it to them and they'll keep sending them this fake USDT or USDC. And so they'll think that they're wealthy or making money or whatever, and they'll obviously send them extra to make them feel better. But all the while, it's completely useless tokens that they've created. We have all the protections in Cake to warn you about this. We don't pull the fiat value of this. Users still keep falling for it, despite having to 3 times confirm that this isn't a scam, that they know what they're doing. That's been like the most common. Still rare.
So what, you're just checking the contract addresses to make sure that
I mean, we have a whitelist of the primary ones that are used in this, like the primary tokens that people are going to use anyways. So like we'll know if this is pretending to be USDT, but it's some token this random scammer created. But obviously we don't want to limit the user's ability to add custom tokens that we don't know about. Like, obviously we don't want to lock them in a walled garden. So there's always a kind of balance there, but they have to click through like 3 different warnings in 3 different places on the screen that they're forced to read, like all of this, but people still fall for it. And that's like, when we think about security for Bitcoin wallets, that's always the lowest common denominator. And that's always going to be a problem no matter what approach you take. I mean, even if you're talking BitKey, a user who would do something like that is also just going to send the money out of BitKey, sign the transaction, and send it because they think that they're getting the deal of a lifetime or something like that. There's always these things that we can't prevent. But I only say that because the vast majority of the times I've seen people lose money over the years, it's either they didn't back up their seed at all, which is an interesting, probably pro for something like a BitKey, because it makes it much harder to do that because that's not a part of the process. You keep your hardware wallet, or you keep your phone, or social recovery, or they're having some specific like spear phishing campaign that's attacking them. But I think that's where, like, in the space more broadly, we have to lean into, and like, we're not doing this at Cake yet, so like, I'm pointing at myself as well.
Yeah.
We have to lean into social recovery, I think, much harder, because there's a world where you can do both. Like, you can have the seed phrase, you can force people through verification, which I think is something we should continue to do. But you can also have social recovery done in a very intelligent way. And that's another specific actual use case for Nostr that I think could be really good. Is using Nostr for that social recovery without the users having to know that like Nostr is a social media platform. Like, maybe you want to do that, but you can just use Nostr under the hood. So let's say 3 Cake users agree to be each other's social recovery contacts, and if any 2 of them sign off, someone can get their money back despite having lost their seed. Something like that is something where we definitely need to lean into that more. Something I think I would love for us to do at Cake is lean into social recovery, because that's like the next best solution other than going seedless and just obfuscating all this from the user, which has a lot of other side effects. You can do social recovery in a way that's very secure, but also much more user-friendly than the seed phrase thing.
By the way, that's how I think we're going to try and do it with and with key rotation on Nostr is with social recovery.
I like it.
Which also we actually already, like, activists already do it in like hacky ways for centralized platforms. Like, they share passwords. So like if one person gets arrested by the secret police, like, they send out the bat signal and the other person changes the password, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because once they get one person, they try and get the social graph. It's like I don't know. I agree with about social recovery. It's hard to do, right?
Yes.
It's really hard to do if you don't already have a social network. Like if you don't already have a network graph, because you kind of need them. You need to bootstrap the web of trust a little bit. And then the last piece
on the Nostr social media side, yeah. On the wallet side, I don't think you need any of that, because you can easily just have you
send like an invite link.
Yeah, you send an invite link and you have maybe a simplified version of the app or a simplified mode in the app where all it is the social recovery side. So like if my grandma, maybe she's not going to be a Cake Wallet user, but she could be a great social recovery person because she's always around. She's not going anywhere. Like that's not a problem. So you don't necessarily need it for that side, but for the Nostr key rotation, obviously you need a social graph.
And then last but not least, it's just hard to test. But I agree that's the direction to go. Because then I need like 5 people to test it with and like put funds in and go through the process and see how it works. But it's all solvable. I like social recovery. I think that would be a big feature add. And then I would just say last but not least, like I said it in passing, but just the big ass warning you give to people, I think probably saves a lot of people. Like just don't ever, like a nice piece of education that's built into the UX, because let's be honest, they're not going to watch like a 2-hour YouTube video or something on securing their stuff, I think is really important.
Yeah. Hopefully they read it, but it's there. It's there.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I told you we were going to go an hour and 15 and it's 2 hours and 20. So
I knew you couldn't help yourself. We're getting back to old Citadel dispatch days.
Seth told me that an hour and 15 was too short for me. Well, we got to do another long one. It's great. I enjoyed the rip. I'd love to have you back in, like 6 months, a year, as you guys build out a lot of these features. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience before we wrap?
Nothing crazy. I think just, thank you for the opportunity. Love chatting about what we're doing at Cake Wallet, but really just continuing to chat about Freedom Tech. I mean, I know I've said it before, but you're the main reason why I'm in the space at all. Main reason why I started a podcast and started to talk about this stuff as well. So it's been awesome to see that journey, and just cool to keep touching base with you over the years. So yeah, I mean, I guess just last little thing, if anyone wants to learn more, at Seth for Privacy on X, at Seth for Privacy on Nostr as well, or I can't remember what my Nip05 is, but I'm on there.
I'll post his X handles and his Nostr handle in the show notes.
There you go. There you go.
But he's not active on Nostr, so don't bother with the Nostr handle. He will be in the future. If you want to check out Cake Wallet, it's just available in your favorite app store. Yep. And is it cakewallet.com?
Yep, cakewallet.com. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Nice and easy.
And it's good to hear that I'm at least a little part of the inspiration for your work. So that I'm basically still on Twitter. I just don't have to send the tweets, which is great. Freaks, thank you for joining us, especially those of you who joined us live. You make the show unique and special. Thank you for everyone who's continued to support the show. I'm going to keep trying to keep the streak up and do a show every week. I don't know when the next episode is, but I'll notify you all on primal.net/Odell. Obviously, Citadel Dispatch is available in your favorite podcast app. Share with friends and family. Click that nice subscribe button. I hate saying it. Just don't click the subscribe button. Click it if you want to. Take your friends and family's phones, open up the podcast app, and then subscribe for them. And you don't even have to tell them. It doesn't require agency. Awesome. Thank you, Seth, for joining us. And